Chapter 593. The upright Liszt was patiently listening to the Siren Chi's reflections on his book, Speculations on the Correlation Between Magic Net Nodes, Elves, and Dragons. He had mentioned his conjectures about the magic net to Chi many times, so Chi was able to provide feedback as soon as he finished reading this theoretical work. Brother, Chi thinks that the magic net is not a net, but a field, although it is indeed like what you described, similar to a spider web producing nodes. Field? Liszt was a little puzzled. He did tell Chi about electromagnetic fields, because this world also had a compass. When he explained why a compass was a guide, he used the concept of the Earth's magnetic field. Then he explained electromagnetic fields, such as magnetism generating electricity, electromagnetic induction, and so on. He didn't expect Chi to not only remember the field, but also use the field in the concept of the magic net. She continued, Brother said that objects moving in a magnetic field can cut magnetic induction lines and generate electric currents. Yes, I did say that, Liszt replied vaguely. In fact, he had graduated for too many years without touching a physics book. He was already vague about many physics concepts and didn't know whether his statement was correct or not. If he hadn't wanted to inspire Chi's understanding of the truth, he would have been too embarrassed to bring out half a bowl of water. If he remembered the concept wrong, he would have made a fool of himself. So Chi thinks that the magic net is a field that shrouds our world, that casting spells is using magic arrays to cut magnetic induction lines, and that magic is the electric current phenomenon generated by electromagnetic induction. This explanation. It felt very folksy. Liszt couldn't help but ask, Chi, do you have any basis for making these inferences? Chi shook her head. I don't have enough evidence to prove this for the time being, but Chi has been reading a lot of magic books recently and listening to my brother talk about a lot of esoteric knowledge. I also studied a lot of natural magic. There are a lot of experiences brewing in my brain. Then, she said with some distress, the concept of the magic net being a field is my vague inference, but I can't prove whether the magic net is a net or a field. Brother, I have a lot of knowledge now, but I don't know how to deal with it. Many of their theories conflict with each other. Liszt had a flash of inspiration. Chi, learn to write books with me. Writing books is what all mages do. Even the magic apprentices who only know how to cast fireballs know to publish books. You're already a great sorcerer, but apart from a few spellcasting books, you haven't written any magic books yet. Now, you should organize your brain and create a book. As a historian, magic theorist, aura theorist, sociologist, musician, and playwright, Liszt had rich experience in writing books. As a sociologist, he carefully studied the social system of this world and divided it into 5 classes: upper nobles and lords, middle and upper magicians, knight, officials, and artists, middle and middle technicians, mercenaries, middle and lower castle servants, craftsmen, merchants, and workers, and lower serfs. As a historian, although his book Dragon's War in the Wild had been abandoned, after reading many knight novels and magic books, he had sorted out a broad thread of civilization. Furthermore, they had made many historical inventions to fill in the missing important parts of this world's history. Once published, they would be destined to provide a lot of material for later generations of historians. As a musician, although his Liszt's piano works collection only has a few pieces, such as To Alice, With You, The Swan of St. Saëns, and so on, his piano skills can't be considered proficient. But every time he played the piano, a large number of aristocratic ladies would take the initiative to throw themselves into his arms. As long as he continued to study, becoming the king of the piano was just around the corner. As a playwright, he had not yet published any plays, but under his guidance, a new type of drama was created. This kind of drama in the form of a stage play had begun to become popular outside the Coral Island. As a magic theorist, his theory of 3-state magic array and reality interaction, triangle theory and unified demonstration of magic array structure, as well as the latest speculation on the correlation between weave nodes, sprites, and dragons would undoubtedly occupy a place in the history of magic development. As a Qi theorist, he was even more amazing. The book Liszt's Earth Codex had become a treasure of the Tulip family. Although Liszt's Earth Codex had not been divulged, it was absolutely pioneering. It used a scientific method to summarize the essence of taking drugs, which was amazing. And he was still working on the even more amazing Liszt's Dragon Taming Handbook. Once completed, the world would change color. At this moment, Liszt, who had many titles attached to him, analyzed very seriously, writing books is not a waste of time. Through writing books, one can better summarize the results of one's research, sort out the thoughts of the brain, and make the chaotic thoughts orderly, thereby obtaining more inspiration. After listening to his explanation, Qi couldn't help but nod seriously. Well, Big Brother is right. Qi has learned too much and stuffed it into her brain without sorting it out. It is time to organize them into a book. Very well, I look forward to your book. It just so happens that the white paper workshop in the territory is developing a new type of paper. When the time comes, I will use the new white paper to publish a book for you. Let more people know the name of A. Keloid's truth. Thank you, Big Brother. Her research on nature magic had not been thorough, and Qi had to start writing a book. Her days were so busy that she didn't even have time to swim in the sea. Fortunately, she still had a mission, which was to go to the Dodo Island every few days to catch a large amount of fish for Charmander. This journey was the best time for her to relax, get close to the sea, and cleanse her soul. After returning, she had to continue researching magic, writing books, and organizing knowledge. Liszt was also very busy, but most of the time he was busy blindly. After leaving Qi's place, he went to the Mage Tower and brought his latest book to Crazy Truth for reference. At the same time, he attached the topic of, is the magic net a net or a field? He was already too lazy to study it. Whether it was a net or a field, he simply left it to Qi and Crazy to figure out. As a magic theorist, he only needed to put forward a theoretical conjecture, and the rest was left to the magic experimenters to prove. Crazy knew very little about the magic net. This theoretical work shocked her greatly, so she buried herself in it, unable to respond for a long time. Liszt didn't have time to waste here. He received a notice from Captain Costo that the sky ship Sunset, which had been repaired and transformed in the dock, was completely completed and was ready to be launched for an ocean trial. As a three-masted sailing ship, the Sunset would become the flagship of the Black Horse Island fleet for some time to come. Therefore, as a lord, Liszt naturally had to personally participate in this ocean trial. The sailing route had long been determined. It would set off directly from the new port, go to the port of Coral City to stop for supplies, and then circle around Coral Island before returning to Black Horse Port to dock. Chapter 594. The Sunset was moored in the dock and was about to go on a long voyage. Liszt rode the Chocobo Loki and looked at the sky ship with a length of 65 meters, a width of 19 meters, and 3 huge and thick masts erected. With the collapse of the civilization of the Sun's Child, this huge ship that soared in the sky in an unimaginable way has completely become history. When Liszt salvaged it and decided to transform it into a sailing ship, it had already said goodbye to the past and moved on to a new future. Sir Lord, the current state of the Sunset, from what I know, is not inferior to the Palace fast sailing ship. The speaker was Buck Driftwood, an apprentice shipbuilder. He came from a shipyard on Leather Island, the property of Marquis Ramirez White Glutinous Rice, who was forced to leave the shipyard for some reason. Then he was invited by the Tulip family through the caravan channel to settle in Black Horse Island and serve as the master of the shipyard. There were 3 families in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire that could build brigs: the White Glutinous Rice family, the Pineapple family, and the Sapphire family. There used to be the Marquis Bull family, which also mastered the shipbuilding technology of brigs, but now the Bull family has long since disappeared. Among them, the Sapphire family also mastered the method of building a 3-masted sailing ship, which was basically the world's top shipbuilding technology. It was strictly confidential and could not be leaked. It was impossible for ordinary nobles to poach people from the Sapphire family to build ships. Even if they did take away the shipbuilder, they would soon suffer the wrath of the Grand Duke. Therefore, Liszt could only ask his father Lee William to poach people from the white glutinous rice and pineapple families. He could not poach a shipbuilder, so he poached an apprentice shipbuilder. This apprentice shipbuilder named Buck Driftwood was quite skilled and was responsible for presiding over the technical development of brigs. It was believed that it would not take long for Liszt to master the technology of brigs. Coupled with the keel-fixing technology he got from Virginia Truth and the vertical sail technology he knew, he would definitely be able to build a high-quality sailing ship. With his rich experience in shipbuilding, Buck Driftwood also took over the heavy burden of transforming the Sunset from Captain Costo. After experimenting with new materials and new structures again and again, he finally completed all of the Sunset's modifications. I've studied palace speedboats before. Those mortise and tenon structures are very complicated. I can't find the answers to many of the mortise and tenon techniques for bearing and operating weight. But the rubber glue of the territory can replace those mortise and tenon structures. The Grand Duchy of Sapphire was short of iron. All the boats were made of wood, and there was no way to weld them, so they used mortise and tenon structures to build them. These mortise and tenon structures could not be understood with just a few observations. Barker wouldn't be able to understand even if he dismantled a royal ship and placed it in front of him. But the most important specialty of Black Horse Island, which plays an important role in shipbuilding technology, is rubber water. Materials bonded with rubber water were stronger than steel rivets. The solidified rubber water was resistant to fire, water, magic, and corrosion. In terms of the main keel, it still needs to be fixed by mortise and tenon structure, but the details can be replaced by rubber glue. Therefore, the Sunset's condition will not be any worse than the Palace speedboat. However, to develop three-masted sailboat technology, I'm afraid it will take time to research. Barker was about 35 years old and started working in the shipyard at the age of 15. He may not have any talent, but with many years of experience, there was absolutely no problem with his vision. The Sunset has reached the standard of long-distance sailing. Then let's go. Waiting for the Sunset to replenish its nautical supplies, Liszt led a night squad and boarded the ship with Gort, Blair, Costo, and other officials. The wide deck. It felt wider than when he first rode the Taro family speedboat. The sea breeze blew, and the sailors immediately, under the command of the first mate and second mate, weighed anchor, raised sails, and rowed. The Sunset cut through the waves of the sea and slowly sailed out of the dock, from green water to blue water. The ship was very smooth, and there were tables and cups on the deck. Liszt could sit under a parasol and taste the fragrant coconut juice. At the top of the mainmast, a black tulip temperament fluttered in the wind. "My lord, the Sunset is really magnificent. Such a sailboat is definitely not inferior to the Grand Duke's Palace speedboat." Gort held a fragrant coconut and said happily, "It is indeed very mighty, but I always feel that something is missing." Liszt walked to the bow and said. Gort looked at the bow and suddenly realized, "I know, my lord, the Sunset's repair work is very perfect, but there is no bow image installed. If you want to receive the favor of the Knight's glory on the sea, you should install a sapphire dragon bow image at the bow." The sapphire dragon was the ruler of the Azure Sea, and its bow image was naturally popular. Bow image? Liszt narrowed his eyes. He was not willing to install a sapphire dragon bow image. If it was to be installed, it should be a fire dragon bow image. But compared to the bow image, he preferred another tool to be installed on the bow, the ram. At present, there was only one navy in the Azure Sea, the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. It seemed meaningless to install a ram on a sailboat. There was no naval war. The small dinghies or oars produced by the land kingdom simply did not dare to go out to sea. A wave would basically capsize the boat and kill the people. But Liszt still decided to let the shipwright study the ram after returning. If I can coexist peacefully with the Sapphire family, the ram will naturally be useless. But in case the Sapphire Grand Duke cannot tolerate me, a naval war is bound to happen. The ram may be a strategic advantage. He looked for Costo and Buck and described the armor to them. After you go back, you must carefully study the ram. Yes, my lord. The wide sunset certainly could not compare with the palace speedboat, which was the speed of an ordinary brig. It was already sunset when they arrived at the Coral City port from Port Town. The setting sun hung on the horizon. Looking from the port, it just so happened to reflect the black tulip flag. Levis, who came to greet Liszt, looked at such a picture without much emotion. He did not know the meaning of the sunset. It was to commemorate the lost civilization of the sun's child. Since the sinking of the ship in the sky, the civilization of the sun's child had completely declined. Liszt, is this the three-masted sailboat that you salvaged from the bottom of the sea? Levis saw Liszt disembark from the sunset and could not help but ask, it doesn't seem to be a three-masted sailboat of the palace. The hull shape and style are very different from the palace sailboat. Perhaps it is a shipwreck of the Magic Goat family from 100 years ago. Basically, only the hull is left, and the rest was repaired by me with rubber water. But it looks very good. It doesn't look like a shipwreck. The whole body has been polished, and many decayed materials have been replaced to make it look brand new. Liszt said with a slight smile, it may not be comparable to the palace speedboat, but it should be more powerful than the Tulip. At least from the outside, it looks bigger. Levis flattened his mouth. The Tulip is an old ship for more than 10 years, it should have been replaced long ago. If it weren't for the fight with Mary and her son, would have bought a more comfortable three-masted sailboat out of my own pocket. He had made a lot of money from cooperating with Liszt in many industries. Therefore, his tone was very big. He wanted to buy a three-masted sailboat that cost thousands or even tens of thousands of gold coins. Liszt, who had long been in theft, had no interest in fighting over the family property. He looked at the dockworkers carrying the Sunset's cargo and was very pleased. With the Sunset, we can pull at least 1,000 serfs per trip. You should buy a ship when you have money. With a ship, you can do big business. The family does have a plan to continue to buy a batch of cargo ships, mainly because the glass produced in your territory is becoming more and more popular. Liszt, Loria has calculated that according to the current growth in sales, the glass business alone is enough to support the original Tulip family. Originally, liquor was the most profitable industry in the territory, but now the glass business had far surpassed it. This was an exclusive business, and an exclusive business with no cost at all. Let Loria be more relaxed. The Grand Duchy of Sapphire is, after all, a remote archipelago country with a small population and few nobles. The vast continent is the place to do business. Once I fully explore the glass technology and expand the scale of production, gold coins will be just a bunch of numbers. That's right. In the future, gold coins will be just a bunch of numbers to us. Levis was very excited as he imagined the beautiful blueprint. Father has not returned from Blue Dragon Island, grandmother doesn't like Madame Mary, Ulvera has returned to Falcon Town, and Loria is not feeling well. Why don't we go directly to Gravel Castle? For what? An interesting party. Levis showed a lascivious smile. Liszt calmly shook his head. Brother, how many times have I said that I don't like this kind of party? I will rest at Tulip Castle for the night and return by ship tomorrow morning. Chapter 595. Levis had his own social circle. The nobles of Broken Stone Castle and Beer Castle would basically be his future followers. Liszt didn't want to get involved, not to mention that he really didn't like promiscuous parties. He preferred to walk onto the dance floor and dance to the piano music. When they saw each other, they would hold hands and talk about life ideals. Instead of simply eating and drinking, there would be no feelings, only desire, and no style at all. He first went to the small castle next to Coral City and chatted with his grandmother, mainly to observe Madame Penelope's potted plants for signs of breeding sprite worms, but he didn't find anything. In fact, he didn't tell Madame Penelope about the sprite worm bred by the stone flower. He understood that the smoke mission was the only reason why Madame Penelope's potted plants were so magical, so he didn't want Madame Penelope to continue to be obsessed with potted plants. The old lady should watch more stage plays, have tea parties, enjoy the afterglow of life, and take care of potted plants in her spare time. After resting in Tulip Castle for a night, they set off early the next morning. The voyage went smoothly, and they arrived at Black Horse Port before dark, completing the Sunset's first ocean voyage. After the accompanying apprentice shipwright, Buck Driftwood, inspected the Sunset system, he said, "My lord, the Sunset structure is up to standard, but there are still some areas that are worth improving. After a week of reinforcement and modifications, it can basically be finalized." "Very good." List expressed his satisfaction and immediately chose the captain. The experienced Costo was the best choice. The crew was also the first batch of sailors in Flower Town. They had fought the wind and waves many times on the sea and knew how to handle bad weather. However, the Sunset probably wouldn't encounter bad weather. In order to match his flagship, List gave the largest black pearl in his collection, the black pearl the size of a bathtub, to Chris, Elksun, and 2 other mages to make it into the most powerful wind pearl. In addition, a water-calming divine pearl made of pink pearls was also provided to the Sunset. The divine tempering beads made of gold pearls were also installed in List's exclusive cabin. The Sunset's hull was wide and sturdy, so it had a relatively large tower building. It was a 2-story building made of wood. This tower building was List's exclusive cabin. When he was on the ship, the tower would be equipped with male and female servants, so that he could still enjoy a full range of servant service while he was sailing. The only pity was that the divine warming pearl couldn't lower the temperature below 0. Otherwise, it could be used as a refrigerator to refrigerate a bunch of delicious food instead of putting it into the gem space. The gem space was not big. It was a spherical shape with a diameter of about 5 meters, about 65 cubic meters, the size of a single apartment. He had 4 space gems, but the total volume was no more than 260 cubic meters. Based on the 2.6-meter height of a residential building on Earth, it was only a suite of 100 square meters. World of Warcraft meat alone took up most of the space, and there wasn't much room to carry all sorts of delicacies. Of course. He was too greedy. Even a duke like the Sapphire Grand Duke, who ruled a country, probably did not have a space ring, and he had to go out on a simple voyage. He had 4 space gems. If he sold one at will, it would be absolutely easy to get the title of Earl. Those kings and dukes would never be stingy for a space ring. However, the space gem was related to the secret of the invisible dragon, and List was reluctant to expose it. In the next few days, the Sunset was moored at Black Horse Port for painting, renovation, and interior decoration. List returned to Flower Town and started his ordinary daily life. The only thing that was not ordinary was that 2 tulip worms were born one after another. One was golden and the other was bright red, both bright, crystal like jade, extremely beautiful. After the contract, the number of sprite worms he had reached 47 to 5 of which were contractors with a chi. "My family is getting fatter and fatter. Now it's up to you. Come on, little guy." Looking at the earlier tulip worm whose skin had begun to turn gray and its body was rapidly expanding, List was looking forward to it. The tulip worm, which was under great pressure, finally launched an attack on its destiny and entered the fat pupa stage, which determined life and death. Wow! Ella ran over. List suddenly reached out and grabbed Ella, who was about to approach the fat pupa tulip worm, and said, "Ella, you listen to me. From now on, you are strictly prohibited from approaching this box, and you are not allowed to touch the sprite worm. Do you hear me?" Ella twisted her body and screamed. However, Liszt scolded her in his heart. She soon became honest, pouted her mouth, and reluctantly nodded in agreement. Go play. Liszt was a little distressed, but he still hardened his heart and showed indifference. In order to stimulate Ella, he made it work hard. Ella flew back to her box, sulking. In another box not far away, Mickey was still amusing himself by counting the corn kernels. Liszt encouraged the tulip worm in the fat pupa stage. He left the castle, went to the apple tree, and lay down in a rocking chair to relax. Seeing Butler Carter coming over, he suddenly asked, "Mr. Carter, do you think this apple orchard should be transplanted to Thorne's Castle? I will definitely live in Thorne's Castle in the future. Without an apple orchard, I always feel that something is missing." Butler Carter put a cup of green tea on the apple table and said with a smile, "Master, you can now plant apple trees in Thorne's Castle. When the castle's main body is built next year, the apple trees should be able to germinate and grow branches. In a few years, there will be a new apple orchard. Unfortunately, there is no second apple sprite. An apple orchard without apple sprite worm stock is not perfect. Perhaps we can buy apple sprites from the outer islands," Butler Carter suggested. In the past, he would never have had such an idea. However, with the increasing income of the territory, his boldness began to grow. Buying a sprite worm was a piece of cake. Liszt nodded at once. "Well, have the caravan pay more attention. If there is an apple sprite worm for sale, buy it immediately." He decided to build an apple orchard in Thorne's Castle, in case one day an apple fell on his head. With a burst of inspiration, he might discover the world's gravitational force. While the days were leisurely, Count Lee William finally returned from Blue Dragon Island. On the day of his return, he summoned his followers to Tulip Castle for a meeting. He laid out the contents of this year's expansion order. The Grand Duke has contacted the Steel Ridge Kingdom. This year's expansion order war will begin in August. We will set off on July 20th and assemble at Oxhoof City. The expansion order war had been going on for hundreds of years. Whether it was earlier or later, or even if it was cancelled, it was nothing new. Therefore, no one raised any objections and directly jumped to the next step, the scale of the orders of chivalry, as well as the distribution of the candidates. Liszt sat in his chair, looking relaxed. He wasn't interested in discussing. Chapter 596. The final result of the meeting was that Coral Island would do its best to participate in this expansion order, and the scale would be larger than the Battle of Ironhoof Island and the annihilation of Marquis Bull. Because many Earth Knights had been incorporated into the expansion order last year, nearly 1,100 Earth Knights could be sent to participate in the war this time. Among them, Liszt would lead 60 Earth Knights and serve as the head of the Black Orders of Chivalry. However, his main task was still the sword battle, and the command of the Orders of Chivalry was directly handed over to Marcus. Before Emily grew up, Marcus was always his chief knight. The well-trained Blizzard Beast squad was about to appear in full. It was time to let the nobles of the Eagle Kingdom experience the horror of a big dog tearing down a house. The meeting was over. The nobles returned to their territories to prepare for the Orders of Chivalry. The departure was set on July 20th, and there was not much time left before the departure. Fortunately, he had prepared beforehand, so Liszt was not too busy and still lived a routine life. He went to the volcano of Dodo Island twice and squeezed the little fire dragon Leo to improve his strength. Then he paid Leo to a Chi to deliver food every few days, so that the little fire dragon would not starve to death when the war came back. "Brother, rest assured, a Chi will take good care of Leo. Pike, take care of them too." A Chi suddenly thought of something. "Brother, are you going to take Rose with you? Rose can protect the fleet in the sea." "Rose, forget it, let her accompany you." Liszt did not intend to take the colorful whale Rose with him. Except for the 20 days of round trip, he was not at sea for the rest of the time. The battle still took place on land, and Rose could not help much. By the way, Achi, have you started writing a book? Achi is sorting out the books to be written. There are too many ideas, and I have to write a lot of magic books. When brother returns from the war, Achi can almost write a part of it. Then when I come back, I will enjoy Achi's work. In the blink of an eye. It was almost the day of departure. The affairs of the territory had all been arranged, no matter how big or small, and the officials had got to coordinate the overall situation. Although they might not be very aggressive, at least they could ensure that everything went on as usual. The knights would be controlled by Paris, who would do her best to ensure the safety of the territory. At the same time, Achi would also be on guard in secret. Paris's fighting power in the form of a black dragon gang could not be underestimated, and Achi was a water magician. Her fighting power in the water was very strong. If pirates were to attack Black Horse Island, Achi would be able to solve it alone. Standing in the middle of the sea, Achi cast several high-level spells in turn. Without the Sky Knight to block them, there was no way to stop her. The rat sent in the dark would also have nowhere to hide under Paris's search. It was extremely easy for Paris, who was invisible, to investigate a person. Coupled with the great magic caster of the Magus Tower, Crazy Truth, there was no need for Liszt to worry about the safety of the territory. The only thing that made him uneasy was the tulip worm. The tulip worm was motivated by pressure. After entering the fat pupa stage, even if Liszt encouraged it every day, its magic still withered day by day. When he was about to set off, the fat gray tulip bug's magic power was already faintly discernible. It's dangerous. It won't fail, right? Liszt was nervous. He could no longer feel the emotions of the tulip worm, and the desire to survive had almost disappeared. No matter how he tried to contact it, there was no way to activate the response of the tulip worm. Why is this happening? It is clear that the smoke mission has stirred the threads of fate, but the tulip worm still continues to wither. His face became more and more serious. The fat pupa stage of the tulip worm in the castle was obviously continuing to wither. In the tulip field of the flower farm, the tulip worm stalk also began to curl and turn yellow, its leaves gradually withered, and the flowers on top of its head became dispirited. Even if Liszt constantly tried to add fertilizer, sprinkle jade powder, and even grind many magic potions of chaos magic power to replenish the worm stalk's magic power, it was still impossible to reverse its decline. In the end, under Liszt's helpless gaze, the night before departure, the fat pupa stage of the tulip worm's magic power had completely dissipated. With a light touch, its fat body immediately turned into ashes, disappearing into the air. The tulip field's tulip worm stalk also dissipated with the wind. Since his transmigration, this was the first time his sprite had died. The evolution had failed, and it was as if it had been completely erased. Apart from his memories, there was no trace of the tulip worm left behind. Master. Standing behind Liszt, Carter softly called out, wanting to comfort Liszt. For non-contractors, the death of a sprite worm did not affect them too much. They had not experienced the wonderful feeling of telepathy, and naturally did not have deep feelings. For many people, the failure of sprite evolution was a very normal phenomenon. There was only a 1 in 10 chance of a sprite worm evolving into a lesser sprite. Most sprite worms could not survive this evolution. Like Ella and Mickey in the castle, there was no other way to explain their successive evolutions except for the knight's glory. Even many lesser aristocrats would suppress the evolution of sprite worms. They would rather the sprite worm live for 10 years and die of old age than die prematurely because of evolution. I'm fine, Mr. Carter. I just feel a little uncomfortable. Liszt looked at the empty box, took a deep breath, and said with great enthusiasm, "It's just a sprite worm. When I was a child, I saw many Tulip Castle sprite worms fail to evolve. There will be more and more such situations in the future. Yes, people have to live, age, get sick, and die. The same is true for sprites. I will leave tomorrow. The castle will be handed over to you. Please rest assured, master. There is nothing to worry about. As for the seaside villa, according to my previous arrangement, occasionally send someone to clean it, and do not let people approach it casually. Butler Carter nodded and said, "As you wish, master." List turned his head and smiled. "I know what you are thinking, Mr. Carter. I have a lot of secrets, and I believe you will keep them for me, right?" His behavior was different from that of ordinary people. As a trusted butler, how could Carter not notice it? The grizzled Carter smiled playfully. From the Sapphire Grand Duke to the serf in the farmland, everyone has a secret. Master's secret is Carter's secret, hidden in the castle's cellar. There is only one key to open it, and it will accompany Carter to be buried in the soil. You will live a long and healthy life. List smiled knowingly. Don't work too hard, take care of yourself. My castle can't do without you. Leave the trivial work to the servants. Chatting with Butler Carter eased the depression in his heart. After List returned to the study, he sat in a chair and pondered for a moment before summoning the smoke mission. This was the first time he failed the mission. He did not know what changes would happen to the smoke mission. While concentrating, the faintly discernible and ever-changing smoke slowly rose and quickly twisted into serpentines. Chapter 597. This chapter is a reward for the leader, Dusk's battle song. 1 chapter for now and 11 chapters in the future. Come to think of it, Warsong had gotten 3 accounts, and all of them had become leaders. The mission failed. The smoke mission, which had been going smoothly, failed for the first time. As early as when he first discovered the smoke mission, List had thought about what would happen if the mission failed. However, he was afraid of leading to an unpredictable outcome. He had been working hard to complete the mission or change the mission. Coupled with the generous rewards of those missions, he was really reluctant to let it fail. Even this time, the tulip worm evolution, List did not want to fail. However, he still failed. He stared at the smoke serpentines that had begun to change without blinking. Waiting for the latest change. Slowly, the twisted smoke began to form new serpentines. Mission: when good luck is used up, bad luck will replace it. If you often walk by the river, how can you not wet your shoes? But you have to learn to grow in adversity. Like a seagull facing a storm, please defeat the bat in the dark. Reward: Bloody Mary. Huh? There is still a mission? When good luck is used up, bad luck will replace it. List felt surprised. He had considered that the smoke mission would be far away from him, or cause serious injuries. He did not expect that just a few words expressing good luck would become bad luck, and then asking him to defeat the bat in the dark. After the mission was completed, there was still a reward. There was basically no change. He was somewhat disappointed and inexplicably relieved. He was very satisfied with the form of the smoke mission and did not want any changes. Immediately, his attention was focused on the mission. What is the bat in the dark, and what is Bloody Mary? I seem to have heard of Bloody Mary. It seems to be a cocktail. I remember that in many movies, there is a cocktail called Bloody Mary. Are you giving me a new cocktail recipe? Bloody Mary had been interpreted as a cocktail. As for the bat in the dark, List did not quite understand. He thought it was some kind of bat-type World of Warcraft, or was it referring to vampires? In the night novels, there were stories involving vampires, special humans who could turn into bats. Ghosts, liches, and sirens had all been proven to exist. He believed that vampires definitely existed. In Curtis Truth's notes, vampires were also mentioned alongside sorcerers. He seemed to be a special kind of spellcaster like the druids. So, some vampire is carrying the Bloody Mary cocktail recipe with him and wants me to kill him and drop the recipe? List was not nervous. He was no longer an ignorant person. As a half-step dragon knight, as long as it wasn't a dragon knight, he was not afraid of any challenge. When will the bat in the dark night come? He waited for the latter half of the night, but there were no bats in the night. He patrolled around with his magic eye and even rode the chocobo Loki around, but still did not find any suspicious night bats. He didn't sleep well that night. But at dawn the next day, he led the orders of chivalry to Tulip Castle, but there were still no bats in the dark night. He no longer waited. Perhaps the bats in the dark night would attack him on the way. As for attacking the territory, Liszt could only hope that Paris, Chris, and Achi could stop them. He had already told his butler, Carter, that if the territory encountered any danger, he should immediately escort the elves to the castle by the sea and continue to blow the horn he had specially placed. When the time came, Achi would hear the sound of the horn and protect these elves. He believed that the elves hiding in the water could survive safely. Protecting the elves was equivalent to protecting most of the territory. The fleet set off at the port of Coral City. Liszt did not follow the count on the Tulip family's largest three-masted sailboat, the Tulip. He stayed on his Sunset, enjoying the comfort of the constant temperature air conditioning. When he arrived at Oxford City, there was still no movement from the smoke mission, and the bats in the dark night did not show their whereabouts. I talked to Achi. If there are vampires attacking the territory, she will quickly come to inform me while protecting the elves. With Achi's speed and strength, there should be no danger in the sea. If there is a situation, she should come and tell me. There should be no problem. Black Horse Island was a 4-day voyage from Oxford City. With Achi's speed, she could arrive in half a day. Even from Black Horse Island to the mainland, it would not take more than a day. Therefore, if Achi did not appear, he was not worried about the territory. The port of Iron Hoof City was very lively, and almost all the nobles of the Grand Duchy participated in the development order. The fleet of the great nobles was so dense that the entire port was packed. The Count was going to attend a meeting. Liszt did not know many nobles, so he just wandered around Oxford City. Shortly afterward, he heard that there was a trade of sprite worms in the trading market of Oxford City. It was rare for the nobles in the country to gather together, so he naturally could not waste this opportunity. Liszt, who was feeling bored, would not miss it either. He put on a mask and pinned a special dried tulip flower to his chest to resist the stench of Oxford City, and led his servants into the market. "Viscount Liszt, it really is you." Liszt was strolling in the market when someone suddenly greeted him. He turned around and saw that it was the son of Jonas Moongrass, Count of Moonlight City, Jobs Moongrass. "Sir Jobs, are you also shopping in the market?" "Yes, I'm going to see if there are any sprite worms to trade." Jobs was a gregarious man, and he immediately introduced Liszt to several of the young men with him, the scions of the Blue Blood Alliance. Unlike the feudal nobles, the noble children of the Blue Blood Alliance would basically go to the battlefield when they reached adulthood. Although the death rate was relatively high, the speed of promotion was much faster than that of the feudal nobles. Basically, their resources were either rewarded by the Grand Duke or plundered from the battlefield. The proportion of income from the feudal business was very small. The Blue Blood Alliance and the feudal nobles were not a social circle, and the young nobles rarely communicated with each other. However, Liszt, as the youngest Sky Knight in the country, was first-rate in intimidating people. The young aristocrats who were with Jobs bowed politely. Liszt also politely returned the greeting without appearing arrogant or enthusiastic. After exchanging a few words, they went their separate ways and did not communicate further. Liszt continued to look for sprite worms in the market, but there were too few worthy sprite worms. It was rare to see a barley worm that had not yet been contracted. The seller asked for 4,500 gold coins and refused to budge. 4,500 gold coins to buy a barley worm was very foolish. Even a sprite worm that could be used to grow potions was not necessarily worth this price. Liszt did not insist. He did not have a barley-type potion, and buying it would be a serious loss. Moreover, the death of the tulip worm also alerted him that getting the smoke mission did not mean that his sprite worm had no chance of evolution failure. He even decided to give up the plan to stimulate Ella. The evolution of a sprite into a greater sprite also had a high probability of failure. Although it would not die like the tulip worm, it would certainly suffer a great loss of vitality and shorten its lifespan. So he wanted to let nature take its course. He no longer thought of interfering with the evolution of the sprites. He just tried to provide them with pheromones as much as possible to help them increase the probability of successful evolution on their own. In the evening, he followed the count to attend the banquet held by the eldest prince. Chapter 598. The Port of the Iron Shoe City. It was still noisy and lively in the middle of the night. The knights who were bored during the voyage were still making noise in the port, gambling, drinking, or getting off the ship to have fun in the city. Liszt, on the other hand, was sleeping soundly in the tower. According to the usual practice, no matter how drunk he was, he would take a bath first before returning to his room to sleep. Today, for some reason, he was so drunk that he directly fell asleep. Outside the cabin, servants were on duty. There was also a team of night patrolling back and forth, always on guard against the situation outside. Of course, more night were drinking and playing finger-guessing games in the lower cabin, but they did not dare to make too much noise for fear of disturbing Liszt's sleep. A sailor who woke up at night groped his way to the toilet in a daze. The urinal facing the sea was filled with water. One could imagine how filthy the port of the Iron Shoe City would be the next day. Almost all the ship's toilets discharged directly into the sea. It sounded disgusting, but the sea had the ability to purify. After all, those fish and shrimp also needed to defecate and pee, and the excrement and urine would still be discharged directly into the sea. Because of this pollution, Liszt deliberately anchored the Sunset outside the port to prevent it from being suffocated to death by the accumulated stench inside. After the sailor finished peeing, his whole body relaxed, and he shuddered. He put on his pants and walked back. Suddenly, he felt a bird fly past him and jumped in fright. Damn, what kind of stupid bird is it? It's so late at night. After cursing, he returned to the cabin and continued to sleep. But what he did not see was. It was not a bird, but a pitch-black bat with blood-red eyes. The bat flew around the Sunset, finally determined the direction, and quietly landed on the glass window of the small tower. Hanging upside down, its head just passed a bit of the glass and could see into the room. This was not a special bat, only the size of a palm, but its blood-red eyes were particularly spirited. Then, he looked around the interior of the house. There were 3 servants in the room, 1 male and 2 female. The 2 female servants seemed to be reporting something to the male servant. Then the male servant nodded, indicating for the 2 to continue. He himself took out an iron from the cupboard, filled it with charcoal, and waited for the iron to heat up before ironing the clothes. The bat watched for a while, then dropped to the ground. It flapped its wings and moved to another window. After changing rooms a few times, it finally chose a room and crawled in through the gap between the door and the floor. The room was very dark. There was no light, but it was chilly. The temperature was much lower than outside. This caused the bat to stare blankly, as if it did not understand why the room was so cool. But it didn't care too much about it. Instead, it flew up and flew towards the bed. He circled around the bed twice, as if trying to determine if the person sleeping on the bed was really asleep. Seeing that the sleeping person was covered in the smell of alcohol and breathing evenly, it flew away from the bed in satisfaction. In the next moment, the bat on the edge of the bed suddenly emitted a scarlet light. As the light flickered, it had already transformed into a woman with a voluptuous figure. She was not tall, and she was dressed in a tight black leather shirt and pants. His pale face and pitch-black hair could be vaguely seen in the dark room. His blood-red eyes were very clear, as if they were glowing. The bat turned into a woman. She stood on the edge of the bed and took out a small syringe-like tool from her bulging chest. Then she bent down, as if she was going to use the syringe to collect some blood from the person sleeping on the bed. But just as she was about to do it, the person who was sleeping suddenly stretched out his hand and directly strangled the female bat's neck. Then, there was a burst of light. It was unknown when, but a crystal lamp was placed on the head of the bed. The light quickly illuminated the room and the owner of the arm that was strangling the female bat's neck. It was Liszt, who fell asleep after returning from a drunken stupor. His starry vortex-like pupils were full of indifference and mockery, and a faint mocking smile hung on his handsome face. The bat in the dark, I thought it was some terrifying existence, but it turns out it's just a sneaky vampire. Tell me, who are you? From his tone, it seemed that he knew about the female bat's invasion. And it was true. He had been thinking about the dark night bat for the past few days, so he did not relax his vigilance at all. There was no warning from the territory, and it was unlikely to encounter bats during the voyage. After thinking about it, Oxford City was the best place to encounter the dark night bat. That was why he tried to attract the dark night bat by pretending to be drunk. The alcohol went to his head, and he could easily get rid of it by running the dragon's chi. Originally, he just wanted to give it a try and did not have much hope. Unexpectedly, in the dark room, when he cast magic eyes, he saw a blood-red bat circling around the tower. So, he pretended to be asleep. Lying on the bed, his body was tense, and he was already ready to fight. When the bat flew on the bed, he intended to catch it, but in the end, he did not act rashly and waited for a moment. Then he saw a magical scene. The bat turned into a living woman. Sure enough, it was the legendary vampire who could switch between human and bat at will. Under the light, the appearance of the female vampire was clearly revealed. She had wavy black hair, blood-red pupils, and a pale but beautiful face. The coquettish red lips were slightly opened because Liszt was holding her neck. She had white teeth, but there were no fangs that the legendary vampires should have. Under the tight leather clothes and trousers was a curvy body, full breasts, plump buttocks, and quite sexy. Why don't you answer my question? Liszt was not intimidated by the vampire. He pinched her neck and showed no mercy. But the female vampire suddenly stuck out her tongue, licked her lips, and forced a smile. Then her body exploded with a bang. The blood-red light flickered, and she turned into hundreds of small bats, frantically fleeing in all directions. In an instant, the whole room was filled with bats. The flying bats interfered with the line of sight, and some even took the initiative to attack Liszt. Want to escape? Liszt's chi surged, and his body rushed forward like a sharp arrow. He caught a bat that was about to get out of the door. Among all the bats, the light on this one was the brightest. After catching it, he turned around and punched. The surging chi turned into flames, burning the bats in the room. One by one, they exploded into blood-red light. In the blink of an eye, there were only 2 or 3 bats left in the room. They were still flying randomly, but they did not dare to approach Liszt. As for the bat in his hand, it hissed and screeched, struggling to escape from his grasp. But although Liszt did not tighten his grip, he released a rich high-level fire attribute dragon chi, easily defeating the blood-red magic released by the bat. Stop struggling. Do you think you can escape from my hands? As the number 1 person under the Dragon Knight, Liszt felt that his strength was unfathomable. How could a sneaky vampire escape from his hands? No matter which night novel, vampires did not seem to be very strong, except for their strange movements. From the few encounters just now, he had already estimated the strength of the female vampire. Her physical quality was very weak. Obviously, she was not a knight, but a spellcaster similar to a magician. Chapter 599. Although the movement in the room was short, it still alarmed the squire who was guarding outside, and he quickly came to inquire. "My lord. There's nothing wrong. go back to your post." List did not intend to alarm the others. He wanted to figure out the identity of the vampire first. After the squire retreated, he looked at the bat that had stopped struggling and gently let go of his hand. The bat that fell to the ground suddenly burst into a blood-red light and turned back into the female vampire in a tight leather suit. She did not run away again. Her pale face looked calm, but there was disbelief and fear in her eyes. But soon her eyes returned to normal, and she used a smile to cover up her emotions. As expected of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, the youngest Sky Knight, you are very strong. She spoke in Serpentine, but it was very poor, and there were grammatical and order errors. Obviously, she was not a person of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, a vampire. Of course I am very strong, but let's talk about you. What is your identity? List smiled slightly. Despite the assassination, he still showed a very gentlemanly demeanor. Speaking of which, I have always believed in the existence of vampires, but this is the first time I have seen one with my own eyes. I was just passing by. Do you believe me, Lord Viscount? Of course not. From before you entered the door to after you entered the door, all your movements were in my field of vision. So why not be more straightforward and tell me your identity and intentions in detail? I will consider whether to kill you or let you go. But it's true that I was passing by, smelled good blood, and came here to find Lord Viscount, before the voice died away. List reached forward and grabbed the female vampire's neck again. His face was calm, but the strength of his hand was getting stronger and stronger. I am usually a very patient person, but I didn't take a bath tonight. I feel uncomfortable all over, so my patience is not very good. If you don't say it, I will lose my patience and crush you directly. The female vampire wanted to speak, but because her neck was being strangled, she could not speak. List did not seem to have any intention of letting go. He continued, I am indeed very interested in your origin, but sometimes I can't control myself. I like to kill people indiscriminately. If you want to run, go ahead. If you can get out of this house, consider it my loss. After finishing his speech, he finally let go of her. Cough, cough. The female vampire coughed hard for a moment, her full chest trembling. It was indeed fascinating. Lord Viscount, you are so cruel. Even women are cruel to you. List said lightly, keep talking nonsense. You're testing my patience. There was nothing the female vampire could do. She was struggling and hesitating, and she did not speak again. List did not urge her. He just looked at her, but his thoughts were elsewhere. He summoned the smoke mission, wanting to see if there were any hints for the smoke mission. However, there was something strange. There was no change in the smoke mission, indicating that the mission was not yet completed. Didn't I defeat the bat in the dark? List looked at the female vampire behind the smoke and frowned slightly. He was a little confused about the smoke mission. Could it be that he had to kill this female vampire to complete the mission? Such a frown and the murderous intent in his eyes. The female vampire, who was already struggling, made a decision in an instant. Lord Viscount, my name is Elizabeth Black Knight. I am a Black Knight vampire from the Eagle Kingdom. I am from, you can speak wind language. I can understand it. Well, my name is Elizabeth Black Knight. I am a mixed-race vampire from the Black Knight family. As for the Black Knight family, I am the vampire servant of His Highness Alonso Cyclamen. Elizabeth Black Knight. After she began to speak wind language, she no longer stuttered and could express her meaning clearly. Alonso Cyclamen? List had heard of this name. The title page of Marquis Bull's book about dragons had, His Highness Alonso Cyclamen. So he asked, who is Alonso? He is a Marquis of the Eagle Kingdom. His surname is Cyclamen, but he is also one of the Dragon Knight of the Eagle Kingdom. I don't know much about him. I haven't even met him. I am just a mixed-race vampire. My position in the Black Knight family is very low. Tell me about the Black Knight family, vampires, and your intentions for coming here. Of course I can tell you, Lord Viscount, but I have a condition. Sorry, I don't like to negotiate with captives. Don't, Lord Viscount, listen to me. I am a mixed-race vampire. My heart is held by a pure-blood vampire. The heart is the biggest weakness of vampires. Without my heart, I am no different from being dead. If you help me get my heart, I will completely surrender to you. As she spoke, Elizabeth gently stuck out her tongue and licked her red lips. When the time comes, I will listen to whatever you want to do. The female vampire under the light was very tempting. Although List's soul was no longer that of a young man full of vigor and vitality, his body was still that of a young man. He could not help but feel hot. Fortunately, he immediately activated the dragon's fighting energy and suppressed the heat. His expression did not change. I don't care for vampires who only dare to sneak in the dark. However, I am very interested in pure-blood and mixed-race vampires. By the way, how do you differentiate them? From what you said, it seems that you are not the only vampire in the vicinity. Pure-blood vampires are vampires whose blood has been highly refined and completely integrated with blood magic. Blood magic is a special branch of dark magic. It can be passed down from generation to generation in the family, but the fertility is very low. Mixed-race vampires are vampires whose blood has not been integrated with blood magic. We are all vampires who have been converted from humans. So, you were holding a needle just now, and it seems that you wanted to turn me into a vampire? It was an order from Tubert Black Knight. He wants to turn you into a mixed-race vampire and make you his subordinate. Elizabeth continued, Lord Viscount, you are very powerful. As long as you kill him, I will definitely pledge my loyalty to you and tell you all your secrets. Why should I believe you? In fact, I have enough methods to make you surrender, beg for mercy, and tell me all your secrets. Now, I will give you two choices. 1. Refuse to cooperate, and I will kill you. 2. Cooperate, and if you perform well, I may help you kill Tubert Black Knight. He could see a flash of hatred in Elizabeth's eyes when she spoke of Tubert. Of course, he could not rule out the possibility that she was deliberately putting on an act. After thinking for a moment. Chapter 600. It had been a year and a half since the dragon-slaying incident. During this period, the Grand Duchy of Sapphire had issued a development order and was preparing to issue a second one. Everything seemed unaffected. But unexpectedly, List was once again involved in the aftermath of the dragon-slaying incident. An active dragon knight of the Eagle Kingdom, Marquis Alonso Celeste, sent his vampire servant to Ironhoof Island to search for the missing great magician of Goat Gathering to find out the truth of the dragon-slaying incident. It seemed that he was the shadow behind Marquis Bull in the dragon-slaying incident. Unfortunately, Elizabeth Black Knight was only a mixed-blood vampire. She was transformed from a human by the pure-blood vampire, Tubert Black Knight. According to her own words, she was only at the level of an ordinary magician during the day. The sunlight would strongly interfere with blood magic. At night, the power of blood magic was greatly increased. Her strength could reach the level of an archmage. Moreover, she could transform into a bat and sneak into many places to complete her mission quietly. Tubert is a core member of the Black Knight family. His wife is a native pure-blood vampire. He is a foreign pure-blood vampire who was transformed from a human and gradually upgraded to a pure-blood. At night, his strength is roughly equivalent to that of a Sky Knight who has reached the level of perfection. Elizabeth explained in detail. Vampires could be said to be a spellcaster profession. They could also be said to be a completely new species. Most vampires were mixed bloods. They were humans who were transformed through a ritual to supplement the number of vampires. The inner circle of true vampires was very small. They were all made up of pure bloods. Most of them were native purebloods born between vampires. A small number of them were foreign purebloods who were transformed from humans and upgraded. The birth rate of purebloods was low, but their strength was tyrannical. I don't know about the core members of the Black Knight family. I only take orders from Tubert. He holds my heart. This time, Tubert brought 5 mixed bloods to Iron Hoof Island. I am one of them. As long as you kill Tubert and get his heart, you can order the 5 of us mixed bloods. He had heard many secrets. List remained expressionless as he calmly asked, since Tubert is a perfect Sky Knight, why do you think I can kill him? I'm just a normal Sky Knight who just advanced. This was the truth. Although he had become a Dragon Knight and his Do-Chi had gradually changed into Dragon Do-Chi, it was still an ordinary high-level Fire Do-Chi. It was not perfect. The exact classification of a Sky Knight should be the same as that of an Earth Knight, which was divided into ordinary and elite. However, because the gap was too big, there was an extra level of Sword Saint. A Sword Saint who was known as a Sword Saint was more of an honorary title. If a high-level warrior's energy was not perfected, then he would be an ordinary Sky Knight. If he had perfected high-level warrior's energy, then he would be a perfected Sky Knight. There was no such thing as a high-level Do-Chi that belonged to the Sword Saint level. Sword Saint was a title that relied on one's own strength, and it was between ordinary and perfect. That was why List could call himself an ordinary Sky Knight if he had not perfected his advanced Chi. Elizabeth licked her lips. It was unknown whether it was intentional or not, but there was always some temptation. If I hadn't experienced it myself, I wouldn't believe that Lord Viscount is so powerful. But I can't even release blood magic in the hands of Lord Viscount. I feel that the Do-Chi in your body has a terrifying restraining effect on blood magic. Her blood-red eyes were very bright. I once fought with a Sword Saint. Although I couldn't beat him, he couldn't catch me at all. Even Tubert couldn't catch me easily. But Lord Viscount, you can catch me effortlessly. Your strength is far greater than what I heard. I am willing to take a gamble. As she spoke, she revealed a trembling expression again. The Black Knight family is very terrifying. I used to be just an ordinary magic apprentice. It was Tubert who found that my blood was suitable for blood magic and forcibly turned me into a vampire. I hate vampires, I hate the Black Knight family, and I hate Tubert even more. Her expression was vivid, as if there really was an unforgettable fear and hatred. But List could be sure that Elizabeth was indeed acting, and her expression was a little overboard. So her words could only be taken for a moment and not taken seriously. However, defeating Tubert Black Knight was probably a mission that had to be done. After all, he had already caught Elizabeth, but the smoke mission was still not completed, which meant that the Bat in the Dark Knight was not only Elizabeth, but also Tubert and the other 4 mixed bloods. According to the information provided by Elizabeth, Tubert's strength was probably equivalent to that of a perfect Sky Knight, which was not enough in front of List. Even if the other 4 mixed bloods and Elizabeth were added, he wouldn't have any trouble dealing with them. But vampires were, after all, strange. Perhaps Elizabeth was sent by them as bait to lure List into a trap. He was not yet an invincible Dragon Knight, at most a half-step Dragon Knight. Not only had he not ridden a dragon, but he was also not yet an adult. Even his strength was inferior to that of Marquis Bull. He still had to be careful. Elizabeth, how can I trust you? Viscount, what else do I need to do to make you trust me? I'm even willing to do anything for you. Try not to act in front of me. You may not believe it, but I often instruct the actors in the theater in my territory on how to act. Tubert can control you with his heart, but I can't. How can I trust that you're not lying to me? Or that you won't betray me when I kill Tubert? Elizabeth's eyes lit up. Viscount, have you decided to kill Tubert? List smiled, as if he was talking about something trivial. If you can make me trust you, I don't mind killing a few bats. He took a deep breath, and his plump chest swelled up a little more. Elizabeth extended her right hand and gently scratched her left wrist with the nail of her index finger. Immediately, a wound appeared, and blood began to flow. Of course, she was not cutting her wrist to commit suicide, but using blood magic to extract her own blood, which was the size of a fist, sticky and glowing. Her pale face was even paler, and the blue veins under her skin could almost be seen. She held the blood and handed it to Liszt. "Viscount, this is the blood that I've fused with blood magic for many years. Although I won't die without it, I'll lose almost all my magic and the potential to advance to a pure blood. I hope this will make you trust me." In the vision of the magic eyes, the blood was wrapped in rich red magic power, and the magic light on Elizabeth's body was dim and almost extinguished. After a few seconds of hesitation, he reached out and took the blood. Chapter 601. This chapter is titled, Forget About Giving a Name. Thank you very much. Tubert is very cautious. He never reveals his whereabouts, but my mission tonight is to extract your blood. As long as I contact him, he'll definitely appear. Pure blood vampires have almost no weaknesses other than their fear of light. His bat transformation was at a high level, unlike my bat transformation where only one was my real body. Every bat of his was his real body. If you can't kill these bats quickly, he'll be able to escape. However, I have indeed made preparations. After killing him and absorbing his heart and blood, I will be able to become a pure blood. This is a bloody net, a magical equipment that I asked a great mage to weave for me. It can trap bats. As long as you're fast enough, Lord Viscount, Tubert won't be able to escape. Elizabeth said. She searched the chest area of her leather jacket for a while and took out a folded red net, handing it to Liszt. Speaking of hand speed, Liszt's was definitely not slow. However, he was curious. "You hid everything on you? Why can't I tell?" Elizabeth slowly stroked her chest and smiled. "Please don't doubt my generosity, Lord Viscount." His mouth twitching, Liszt ignored the female vampire's teasing. "Where did you hide your clothes and these things when you transformed into a bat?" The strength of blood magic is that it can transform special items with blood magic, but it can only accommodate a small number of items. I spent a long time refining this net of bloody light with blood magic before it became my personal possession. Interesting. What other items do you have? He's a mixed blood vampire. How could he have so many personal items? I only have the crimson net, which I secretly refined to deal with other vampires. The other blood extraction needle was given to me by Tubert, wife Elizabeth said in a resentful tone. Liszt did not force her. He simply said, "If that's the case, you can leave first. I'll change my clothes and go with you to kill Tubert. Go early and come back early. I still have to shower when I come back. It's uncomfortable." He chased Elizabeth out of the door. Firstly, he did need to change his clothes. Secondly, he wanted to see if the other party would try to escape. Trust was impossible. Before confirming that his blood could restrain his opponent, it was actually a competition of acting skills. Elizabeth transformed into a bat and hung outside the door. The eye of magic could see her dim magic light. Until Liszt put on the mithril armor, Elizabeth did not escape. He looked at the viscous blood on the table and suddenly thought of something. He quietly put the blood into the gem space. The gem space could not contain living things as it would destroy the soul, but it had no problem maintaining the physical body. This blob of blood clearly did not have a soul, so it should be fine to put it in. As for what to do if there was a problem, he hadn't thought about it yet. It was just a flash of inspiration. However, the result was good. Elizabeth had no problems. When she saw him coming out, she let out a soft shriek and signaled for Liszt to follow her. Liszt remained unmoved. Instead, he had the retainer knight bring a pen and paper, and wrote a simple letter, "Give it to Captain Marcus and have him deliver it to my father." After sending away the retainer knight and bringing the chocobo Loki, he signaled Elizabeth to set off. Elizabeth was stunned. She did not know why List wrote the letter, but she did not ask. Instead, she flapped her wings and flew into the night. List rode on Loki and followed behind the bat, flying into the night. After flying for about half an hour, the bat landed. She transformed back into a female vampire and gasped, "Without blood, my magic is almost exhausted. I hope Lord Viscount can protect me in the battle." "No problem. By the way, did Lord Viscount just write to your father, the Sea Wave Sword Saint?" List looked at Elizabeth and said calmly, "Just to tell my father that if I am ambushed and do not return after midnight, he should immediately tell the eldest prince about the vampires lurking on Ironhoof Island. I believe the eldest prince will be very interested in vampires like you." Elizabeth opened her mouth and sighed, "Lord Viscount is really cautious. You have the Dragon Knight behind you, and you are also involved in the dragon-slaying incident, so you can't be too careful." "Well, don't talk nonsense, hurry up and lure Tubbard out. After killing him, I have to go back and take a bath." This was another forest. The moon hung high in the sky, and the hazy moonlight made the forest look gloomy. The surroundings were filled with shadows that blended into the darkness, and coupled with the rustling sound of the wind blowing the leaves, it was particularly terrifying. List, who was hiding on the side, was constantly using magic eyes and keenly observing the surroundings. He did not trust Elizabeth, so after Elizabeth chose a meeting place, he forcibly changed to another forest. Since they were all meeting in secret, of course he had to choose a place where it was impossible to set up an ambush, so he could rest assured. At this moment, Elizabeth cast some kind of unknown blood magic. Then he quietly waited in place. 20 minutes later, List saw a string of red light flashing in the sky, and when the light became clear, he was surprised to find that it was a string of blood-red bats. The bats quickly flew in front of Elizabeth, circled around, and then combined into a tall man wearing a black mask and a red cloak. "Mary, you called me in such a hurry, is it because the mission is completed?" The male vampire was obviously Tubbard Black Knight, and his voice was very hoarse. "I'm sorry, Lord Tubbard, the mission failed, and I was also seriously injured by List, but I barely escaped," Elizabeth replied weakly. This was a well-established routine, using the shock of the mission failure to divert Tubbard's attention, thus creating an opportunity for List to attack. However, at this moment, List did not come out, because he heard Tubbard actually call Elizabeth Mary. He did not know which was her real name, and it seemed that this female vampire had been lying to him, or perhaps Mary was the reward of the smoke mission, Bloody Mary. In the next moment, Tubbard had already slapped Elizabeth's face, causing her to fall to the ground. "Useless, you can't even do such a small thing properly." "Ah!" Elizabeth screamed. This was obviously a reminder to List that it was time to act. List thought for a while, but in the end, he decided to kill Tubbard first. No matter what tricks he had up his sleeve, it was a joke in front of his unfathomable strength as a half-step dragon knight. No one knew how strong he really was, and even if he had a plot, it would be aimed at the ordinary Sky Knight List, not the Dragon Knight List. Boom! Suddenly, List rushed out of the thicket, heading straight for Tubbard. Imbued with a large amount of dragon's fighting energy, he had already used the Scorching Sun Stab. The dragon's fighting energy turned into flames, and instantly pierced Tubbard, who had not yet recovered from his shock, under the attack of the Dragon Knight. No matter how fast the vampire's reaction was, it was still slow. Ah! Chapter 602. Ah! The sword pierced into his heart, and Tubbard let out a shrill scream. His body instantly exploded. Many of the blood-colored light was burned by the flames of the dragon's fighting energy and could not transform into bats. But there was still a large amount of blood-colored light that transformed into bats and flew in all directions. But the next moment, List had already taken out the blood net. Under the hood, Almost all of the transformed bats were caught in one net. When the blood-red net touched the transformed bats, it made sizzling sounds of burning. The group of transformed bats squeaked from the heat. They tried to move left and right, but they couldn't escape. They could only stay where they were and get burned by the lingering flames. The duration of the dragon's fighting energy was getting longer and longer. Lord Viscount, there are still 3 transformed bats that escaped. Elizabeth sat on the ground, her fingers pointing in 3 directions and shouting. Without her reminder, Liszt had already noticed. He stood where he was, and at some point, the swift shadow bow was already in his hand. 3 arrows were quickly knocked and shot out. It flew around in a triangular formation, and in a flash, it struck a bat that had transformed into a human and exploded. The transformed bats were blown into smithereens and dissipated. He turned around and shot another 3 arrows at a bat, causing it to explode. The last transformed bat had already flown far away, but Liszt took out 3 arrows and shot first, then quickly pulled out another 3 arrows and continued to shoot. The 3 arrows behind quickly caught up with the 3 arrows in front. Under the guidance of the fighting energy, they collided with each other and drew a strange trajectory, catching up with the transformed bats in the blink of an eye. Boom! They hit and exploded. A cloud of smoke and fire slowly floated down from the air. The ultimate skill of multiple arrows, multiple phantom arrows, had never missed its target. It had been less than 5 seconds since Elizabeth's warning. Looking at the 3 bats that were trying to escape explode, the female vampire swallowed her saliva with difficulty. While shocked, she was extremely glad that she had made the right choice. The young Sky Knight in front of her was definitely not an ordinary Sky Knight. He was unbelievably powerful. With this kind of strength and age, if he were in the Eagle Kingdom, he would definitely be qualified to be selected as a Dragon Knight candidate by the royal family. In the end, he would become a serving Dragon Knight like His Highness Alonso Copernicus. The royal family did not always produce talented children. In order for the dragons raised by the kingdom to display their combat prowess, they naturally needed a Dragon Knight. Hence, the Dragon Knight candidates became the geniuses in the competition. The winner of the competition would become a true Dragon Knight and serve the kingdom. It would be easy for him to be conferred the title of nobility. In fact, as long as one succeeded in riding a dragon, they would be conferred the title of Earl. After accumulating enough military merits, they would quickly be promoted to Marquis. After accumulating enough military merits, it would be easy to become a duke. Although the dragon would be taken back by the kingdom when he retired, and the dukedom would also be taken back, his descendants would still have the status of a marquis, which would be hereditary. Duke was the title of a country's monarch. According to the rules of each country, dukes were not allowed to be conferred casually. Only a Dragon Knight who raised his own dragon could establish a Grand Duchy with the title of a Grand Duke. If the descendants declined for a long time, they would fall into a Grand Duchy, or even be removed from the country and reduced to an ordinary noble. The thought of the Dragon Knight echoed in Elizabeth's mind. She even suddenly felt a little pity for Liszt. It was a pity that Liszt did not live in the Eagle Kingdom or the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom. This amazing talent was destined to have no fate with the Dragon Knight. Of course, Liszt did not know that Elizabeth was feeling pity for him not being able to ride a dragon. After he shot the 3 escaping bats, he had already taken the time to crush the bats in the bloody net one by one. In the end, these bats returned to the blood-red blood magic and recondensed into an adult male vampire who was bleeding from all 7 orifices. It was the pure-blood vampire Tubert Black Knight. Ugh, Tubert could not move at all. All the bones in his body seemed to have been crushed. Or perhaps it was the restraining effect of the dragon's fighting that caused problems in the recovery of his body. He was as limp as mud. There was a vague sound coming from his throat, but he could not say a complete sentence or a complete word. His eyes were also a little unfocused, unable to focus. What's wrong with him? Liszt turned around and asked Elizabeth, who who was still in a daze. "I just attacked, why does he look like he's about to die?" Why? Lisbeth came back to her senses and stammered, maybe you hit him too hard, Lord Viscount. From the looks of it, it's very likely that the blood magic, bat incarnation was forcefully broken, causing a magic backlash, and he can't maintain the normal functioning of his body. The body of a vampire could switch between bat and human at will, relying on the blood magic, bat incarnation. Once the magic was forcefully broken, it would easily backfire. But unless it was an attack that was powerful enough to kill in an instant, this blood magic would not be broken even if many bats were killed. As long as one bat incarnation escaped, Tubert would be able to return to his human body, and he would only lose a little blood magic. The crushed bats would turn back into blood magic and return to his body through an unknown method. Liszt guessed that it was an application of the magic net. The transfer of magic regardless of distance. No matter what. Tubert had already collapsed, and it seemed that he was not going to be happy. Why? Lisbeth walked over excitedly, an indistinct handprint on her face. She stared at Tubert with uncontrollable desire in her eyes. "My lord, dig out his heart before it stops beating. Blood magic can be condensed seamlessly. And his belongings, there's a blood box with my heart in it." But she was still rational and knew that she had to ask Liszt for instructions first. "Please let me take it out for my lord." Liszt nodded and gestured for Lisbeth to do it. Then Lisbeth squatted down and cast a spell with both hands. Balls of blood-red light appeared and enveloped Tubert, who was still alive. Where the blood magic touched, Tubert's blood actually flowed backward, and soon flowed back into his body, gradually gathering at the location of his heart. Ugh, 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 like a cassette, Tubert repeated every syllable that was released. While he was chanting, Lisbeth suddenly cut open his chest, reached in, and plucked out a glowing red heart that had already stopped beating. The heart didn't seem to be made of flesh and blood, but was translucent like blood jade. The blood vessels were clearly visible, and they were slowly bleeding. When the blood jade heart was pulled out, Tubert's unfocused eyes suddenly flashed, and the muscles of his muddy body twitched. He slowly raised his arm, as if trying to stop Lisbeth from plucking his heart. But that was just the final radiance of the setting sun. Halfway through, his muscles relaxed, and his arm instantly drooped, completely dead. Lisbeth didn't slow down at all after the heart was plucked out. While the body hadn't cooled down and the blood magic was still lingering in Tubert's body, she continued to cast blood magic. She magically took out several belongings from the inside pocket of Tubert's windbreaker. Finally, she slowly took out a long box. She couldn't wait to open the box. Immediately, a blood-red light flickered, and 5 blood jade-like hearts were arranged in the box. Just as she was about to use her hand to take out her heart, a voice suddenly rang out. A light cough came from behind her. Lisbeth was stunned. She turned around with an embarrassed smile on her face. "My lord, this is my heart." Chapter 603. A vampire's heart was similar to a lich's phylactery. However, a lich's phylactery was a coordinate that led to the real world, while a vampire's heart was the core of life. Liszt put away the 5 hearts in the long box, including Tubert's heart. He did not trust vampires. However, he threw the ball of blood back to Lisbeth. "Tubert is already dead. I was going to ask him a few questions. Now that the pure blood is dead, how are we going to contact the other 4 mixed vampires? As long as you squeeze the heart, they will sense it and come to see you. With the heart, we are all your vampire's servants." Lisbeth quickly changed her attitude after Liszt took control of her heart. She became gentle and obedient. She obviously understood that Liszt had become her master. "Take all of Tubert's belongings. Let's go back first. Otherwise, my father will probably go talk to the prince." Liszt whistled and summoned the chocobo Loki. Why, Lisbeth had already absorbed the ball of blood into her body. She smiled charmingly. My body is still weak. Sir, do you mind if I ride on your mount? I'll be straightforward. Why, Lisbeth, your tricks are useless against me. Do you understand? There are many noble ladies in the Grand Duchy who wish to share a night with me, but not many of them are worthy of my attention. So, being a vampire servant is the most reasonable choice. With that, Liszt mounted the bird and galloped towards the port of Iron Shoe City. Why, Lisbeth stomped her feet. She was angry and frustrated, but there was nothing she could do. She could only transform into a bat and chase after the chocobo. After returning to the sunset, Liszt first went to the Tulip to meet with the Count. Is it settled? It was easier than I thought. It was just a bat that couldn't see the light. Unfortunately, I was too heavy-handed and killed Tubert Black Knight. He also had 5 mixed blood subordinates. They're basically my vampire servants now. Maybe I can get some secrets out of them. Liszt gave a simple account of what had happened. The arrival of the vampires was not an isolated incident. It had already affected the internal stability of the Grand Duchy. I didn't expect vampires to actually exist and hide among us. The Earl pondered for a moment and said, let's pretend that this never happened. You need to restrain the 5 vampires. Don't expose them at will. We don't need to worry about the Grand Duke. I understand. By the way, why didn't you bring White Lisbeth here? Let me see what a vampire looks like. She can even turn into a bat. William was curious. I'll bring her to you after we set sail. A vampire turning into a bat is indeed quite magical. They didn't talk for long. After getting the Count's suggestion to downplay the matter, he returned to the sunset. Elizabeth Black Knight was in his room, playing with the belongings she had seized from Tubert. There were 5 items in total. A shiny silver dagger. Why, Lisbeth knew it very well. My lord, this dagger is called Silver Oath. It's one of the magic equipment passed down in the Black Knight family. It can increase the power of blood magic. For vampires, it's a top-notch equipment for night assassinations. A set of clothes, including a black cloak with a red background, and a tuxedo similar to Frack Abier. This set of clothes was similar to Why Lisbeth's tight leather jacket and trousers. It was just an ordinary magic equipment that could change with the wearer and could only provide a small amount of defensive attributes. An item that looked like a book. Why Lisbeth also knew it. This book is called Reincarnation Ritual. It has only one function. Using blood magic, it can boil a person's blood and gradually transform them into the cold-blooded vampire. It's the same set of items as the blood-drawing needles you confiscated. I used this reincarnation ritual to transform from a mage to a vampire. She stroked the cover and fell into a brief moment of reminiscence. Then she came back to her senses and picked up the 4th item. I've never seen this mirror before, but I feel that it should be a protective item. It can probably resist sunlight and restrain light magic. Finally, she picked up the 5th item. This item was a red mask. I often use this mask. It's called Blood Mask. Every time I take back my heart for a short period of time and start training under Tubert's supervision, I will wear it. It can calm the hot and dry elements in a vampire's blood and keep the blood cool. The blood of vampires is cold. Sunlight or light magic would make it warm and boil, thereby consuming and interfering with blood magic and greatly reducing their strength. After knowing the function of each item, Liszt took them away from White Lisbeth one by one, ignoring her resentful gaze. I heard Tubert call you Mary. Is that your real name? When I became a vampire, Tubert gave me the name Elizabeth Black Knight. It's been 20 years. Mary Truth was my name when I was a mage. Later, it became my code name in the Black Knight family. Bloody Mary. Oh. Liszt narrowed his eyes. The smoke mission happened to float in front of him. Mission complete. Reward, Bloody Mary Elizabeth Black Knight. Before List could sigh at the dominance of the nickname Bloody Mary. Why, Elizabeth said quickly, vampires of mixed blood like us all have a code name. Purebloods don't like to call us by our names. Oh, I forgot to mention that the other 4 vampires that Tubert brought are called Scarlet Peggy, Bloody Hamel, Night Demon Wimbledon, and One-Eyed Wuxia. They were all very domineering. Among them, One-Eyed Wuxia made List raise his eyebrows. His coachman's name was One-Eyed Barton. Because of this interruption, the smoke had dissipated, and List hadn't had time to read the new mission yet. But he wasn't in a hurry. Instead, he asked, vampires live by sucking blood? My lord, vampires don't suck blood. Those purebloods like to call themselves vampires. The authors of night novels always describe us as blood-sucking monsters. In fact, we're just mages who study blood magic. It's just that our bodies have some unique changes. So you also eat? Of course we eat, my lord. We eat what normal people eat. Tubert was already dead, and his heart was in List's hands. Why, Elizabeth answered all his questions without hiding anything, behaving like a loyal subordinate. List also gradually understood the vampires, a group of spellcasters that were neither human nor ghost. Other than the fact that their inheritance was relatively secretive, that they liked to appear at night, that they turned into bats to do bad things, and that they had a bad reputation, there wasn't much special about them. They were distributed in every corner of the continent, but there were very few of them. Firstly, the fertility rate was very low, and it was very difficult to give birth to purebloods. Secondly, transforming a mixed blood required a lot of resources, and it was impossible for a talented person to become a foreign mixed blood. A vampire family with 50 members was already a large family. As they chatted, they talked about the cause of this incident. Bloody Mary explained, originally, Tubert didn't intend to transform you, my lord. Even the Black Knight family couldn't bear to waste the resources of transforming a mixed blood. Later, when he heard that you were the youngest Sky Knight of Sapphire, Tubert had the idea to transform you. List didn't say anything about it. But he already knew that this had to be the backlash of the power of fate from the failure of the last mission, which attracted Tubert's malice toward him. Chapter 604. Sorcerers, Druids, Vampires, and Wizards. List had already seen 4 special spellcasters. In Curtis Truth's notes, there was an illustration of the Eye of Truth. The 3 corners of the triangle represented matter, magic, and spirit, and the corresponding spellcaster professions were recorded. For matter, there were alchemists, vampires, and necromancers. For magic, there were sorcerers and druids. In the spiritual category, there were wizards, enchanters, prophets, succubi, and shamans. Most of the ancient wizards had transformed themselves into liches, which meant that Curtis Truth and Marquis Bull Andy Sapphire belonged to the category of wizards. He didn't know if these spellcasters really existed. But he could at least infer that they more or less existed on this continent. The Grand Duchy of Sapphire was located in a remote area, and it had only been founded for 150 years, so it was relatively clean. Those special spellcasters, even if they existed, should be distributed in the various countries of the continent. Tubert's black cloak with a red background will be your reward for pledging allegiance to me. Take it and wear it. I'll ask Thomas to arrange a cabin for you on the ship. You can stay on the ship and focus on being my vampire servant. If you perform well, I'll consider whether or not to return your heart to you. After chatting for a while, List couldn't dig out more information from wife Elizabeth. He began to arrange her new identity. You're no longer a vampire of the Black Knight family. Don't use wife Elizabeth Black Knight anymore. Revert to your original name, Mary. Bloody Mary. Sounds good. Bloody Mary was a little reluctant and said ingratiatingly, Sir, why don't you let me absorb Tubert's heart? When I become a pure-blood vampire, I can serve you better. When you make enough contributions, everything is negotiable. Without contributions, don't say anything. List calmly stated a fact. According to my previous standards, I wouldn't have let you live if you dared to plot against me. You should be grateful that I'm not killing you now. This was a bluff. Back then, Paris had also lurked in the castle with the intention of harming him, but he did not kill Paris. Or rather, his thoughts were deeply influenced by the smoke mission. The power of fate represented by the smoke and his own spiritual power might have long been fused. It was hard to tell them apart. Paris and Bloody Mary were both rewards of the smoke mission, so he was naturally reluctant to kill them. Paris had her sister's temperance, and now Bloody Mary also had her heart temperance. A temperance method naturally maximized benefits and reaped more benefits. When Paris came to the Flower Town, Liszt was still very weak and played the emotional card. Bloody Mary had already missed the best opportunity. Now that she had arrived, Liszt was already a half-dragon knight. There was no need for him to play the emotional card anymore. Holding the heart, no matter how Bloody Mary struggled, she couldn't escape from his hands. Putting the heart into the gem space, she couldn't steal it. I'm going to take a shower now. The 4 vampires might come later. You'll have to receive them and let them understand their current situation. Understood, my lord, Bloody Mary said seriously. She could finally tell that this young Sky Knight was not an immature youth who would be seduced by beauty. Besides, she was not very beautiful, not young, nearly 40, she had been turned into a vampire at the age of 17, and had spent 20 years since then. Because of the blood magic, he did not look old, and his body was still very tender. But in the end, he was no longer young. Moreover, she could clearly feel that Liszt's enthusiasm quickly decreased when he mentioned her age. Heh, men, dang dang dang. A knock on the door brought Bloody Mary back to reality. She replied in unskilled serpentines, "Please come in." The door was pushed open, and a maid, who already knew about Bloody Mary's existence, came in with a glass of juice and placed it on the table. "Madam, please have some juice." "Thank you." Bloody Mary was very friendly towards Liszt's servant. She was a smart woman and knew that her beauty would not be of any use in the future. She had to rely on her own ability to win Liszt's appreciation and reward in order to get her heart back and regain her freedom. She might even get Tubert's heart and become a pure-blood. Therefore, she could not offend Liszt's servant. A casual remark from the servant could ruin her image in Liszt's mind. The maid responded with a smile, but when she saw Bloody Mary's red eyes and pale face, she could not help but open her mouth in surprise. She immediately reacted. "Sorry, I didn't mean it. It's okay. I'm not a sapphire person. My eyes are a little different from yours." "Ah, yes, madam. But your eyes are very beautiful." "Thank you. If you have no other instructions, I'll leave first." "Go ahead." After the maid left the room, Bloody Mary suddenly shouted at the window, "Peggy, come in quickly." Flutter, flutter. A bat flapped its wings and flew in. The bat landed on the ground and quickly turned into a human. It was a tall, blonde woman with the same pale face and blood-red eyes. "Mary, Lord Tubert summoned me." "What's the matter?" "The atmosphere here is not friendly to us. There is no Lord Tubert anymore. Now, your master is the Viscount of Black Horse Island, Lord Liszt Tulip." Scarlet Peggy looked ordinary, but her voice was even sharper. "Are you kidding me?" "I'm not kidding. Tubert was killed by Lord Liszt with a sword. Even the bats he transformed into were crushed one by one. Now, our hearts are in the hands of Lord Liszt. He summoned you here obviously to incorporate you." Scarlet Peggy still did not believe it. Bloody Mary directly picked up the cloak on the table. "See, Tubert's clothes have been rewarded to me by Lord Liszt." "So, Scarlet Peggy, accept your new identity and be loyal to Lord List. As long as you perform well, freedom is not an extravagant hope. Scarlet Peggy's eyes flashed. Then, what about Lord List? Lord List has something to do and will be back in a while. I'm waiting for you here, as well as Hamel, Wimbledon, and USO, to let you understand the fact that Tubert's matter is not a joke. Mary, tell me about Lord List. I seem to have heard of this name. It seems to be the youngest Sky Knight of Sapphire. You're right, but I need to clarify one thing. Lord List's strength is terrifying, so terrifying that he could kill Tubert in seconds. As for how terrifying he is, only when you see him kill Tubert in seconds can you truly understand that kind of insufferably arrogant violence. Chapter 605. Bloody Mary was bragging about the horror of List to Scarlet Peggy, while List was looking at the smoke mission in the bathroom. It only took him 5 minutes to take a shower, but he was thinking more. Thinking about the vampire incident, thinking about the Pioneering Order War. He was also thinking about the new mission. Not only bats but also a lot of rats are dispatched in the dark night. They are mixed in with the orders of chivalry. Perhaps the intention of the battle at the Roaring Estuary will be revealed by them. Please defeat the Great Sorcerer's Harbor Baptism. Reward, a hand-drawn map of the ruins. This was the content of the new mission. The reward of the hand-drawn map of the ruins did not need to be considered for the time being. He was thinking about the information revealed in the mission content. Rats? So, the Grand Duchy of Sapphire's plan to attack the Roaring Estuary will be discovered? He could not help but frown. The plan was just confirmed in the daytime meeting. Even if the rats know the direction of the attack, it will be difficult to deliver it in time, unless they take a fast sailboat and can reach the Roaring Estuary one day earlier than the ordinary fleet. Every time the Grand Duchy of Sapphire fought a Pioneering Order war, they did not reveal the direction of the attack in advance. Instead, the Grand Duke personally gave the order on the eve of the attack. This could avoid the rats of the Eagle Kingdom and the possibility of obtaining the battle intention. After all, attacking at sea was different from attacking on land. No matter how fast the rats ran, they had to take a boat. If they took a boat, naturally the Grand Duke's palace fleet was the fastest, and they could attack before the rats revealed the secret. When the attack began, it would be meaningless for the rats to deliver the information. Therefore, it was basically useless to steal information. Even a rat with a flying mount could not fly continuously on the sea without stopping. Unless the rats take a boat first and then send a carrier pigeon on the boat. No, the carrier pigeon has a fixed flight route. How can the rats ensure that the carrier pigeon comes and goes is the direction of the fleet's attack? They set off from the port of Oxfoot City on Iron Hoof Island. It would take 6 to 7 days to reach the coastline of the Eagle Kingdom, more than 1,000 kilometers away. This distance determined that the suddenness of the fleet's attack could not be predicted. Unless the Dragon Knight rode a dragon and flew without rest, he might really be able to cross this sea without stopping. Other World of Warcraft couldn't fly for more than 1,000 kilometers without stopping. There's another possibility. We can take a boat and enter the range of World of Warcraft before sending the letter. This way, we might be able to send the information 1 or 2 days in advance. But come to think of it, even if we send the information 3 days in advance, what kind of defense can we put up? Every year, at a fixed time, the Grand Duchy of Sapphire would launch an attack. However, the Eagle Kingdom could not stop them. Without the coordination and command of the king, it was impossible for the lords of the various territories to unite and work together to organize a defense system. Together with all kinds of interests involved, the development order was like a feast for both the enemy and the ally in the hinterland along the coast. Most importantly, there are several coastal cities at the mouth of the Roaring Estuary. They are all places where we can launch an attack. The meeting in Cowhoof City only determined the general direction of attack, not the specific target. The detailed attack plan will be discussed again during the voyage. Therefore, the chances of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire being ambushed were slim. If my guess is correct, this mission is more likely to be an accident caused by the misfortune brought about by the failure of the mission. Causing the rats to accidentally send the news to the port city that I want to attack, and then face the baptism of the great mage in the port, there is no doubt that there will be powerful magic waiting. He stood up and wiped the water. Tomorrow morning, I will inform the Count, and then before the attack, send a team of vampires to find out the situation in the port city. I believe this mission is not difficult. When he walked out of the bathroom, he already had a complete idea. Even if there was a real archmage casting a spell, with his dragon fighting spirit, it would be easy for him to defeat the archmage's magic. Back in the territory, he had even defeated a cheese super powerful water magic, water spiral fusion, and that was on the sea. After all, he was a half-dragon knight. It was almost dawn. The noisy port was very quiet. When Liszt returned to the room, there were already 5 vampires sitting in the room. Seeing his arrival, Bloody Mary was the first to stand up, and the other 4 vampires reacted quickly and stood up, their eyes all focused on the door. Liszt, who was 189 meters tall, was wearing a modified home suit, although it was slightly different from the usual aristocratic dress. However, it undoubtedly served to accentuate his tall, slender, and imposing aura of nobility. "You've all arrived?" He went to the table and sat down directly, not inviting the 5 vampires to sit, and slowly looked at the new vampires. Bloody Mary, introduce these 4 vampires. Bloody Mary quickly said, "My lord, this is One-Eyed Wuxia." There was nothing much to introduce, they were all mixed-race vampires, basically the same strength as Bloody Mary. At night they were great mage level, and during the day they fell to the level of mage. With the ability to transform into bats, it was easy for them to take on the role of scout, but their assassin ability was not outstanding. Unless they were drunk like Liszt. Otherwise, when the Sky Knight was sleeping, he would also be vigilant, and the high-level fighting energy would naturally run slowly, waking him up at the slightest movement. If the vampires failed to assassinate, they might be killed instead. After all, he was just a spellcaster. Transforming into a bat was suitable for escaping, but it was still very dangerous for a knight's attack to sweep across a large area. It was very foolish for a spellcaster to engage in melee combat with a knight. 5 vampires, 3 men and 2 women. After the introduction, it was the turn of the 4 new vampires to report their situation, especially the result of coming to Ironhoof Island to search for the great mage of Goat Congregation. Their information was similar to Bloody Mary's. They could not find the great mage, and as mixed race, they had not been in contact with the core of the Black Knight family. The information they could reveal was limited. "Very good, I already know you, and you should know me." Liszt did not waste time and said directly, "Your hearts are in my hands, and from now on, listen to my orders and serve me. I don't care about your loyalty, as long as you show your value, even if you want your hearts back, it is not a problem." The 5 vampires rolled their eyes. Liszt smiled slightly, "I put your hearts in a very secret place. You can try to steal them from me, but I have to remind you, there is only one chance, because if you fail, I will kill you. Also, when I sleep, I like to kill people in my dreams, don't blame me for not reminding you." After that, he directly shook the bell on the table. The valet Thomas pushed the door open and came in. "Master. Go and arrange rooms for these 5 mages, they are my new followers." "Yes, master." Thomas gestured elegantly, "Sir Mage, please come with me." Chapter 606. The task of the vampires had come to an end. At dawn, the fleets anchored at the port of Oxfoot City left one after another. The Sunset also followed the Tulip fleet and left the port, sailing towards the Blue Sea. The vampires on the Sunset had a new task. This was the first task that Liszt gave them: organize the blood magic you are familiar with into a book, specifically including the casting methods of each magic, as well as the reincarnation ritual and other comprehensive information. Also, the composition of the Black Knight family and other vampire families, you know. The vampires were a little stunned. They did not know the meaning of this task. Only Bloody Mary, who thought she was smart, asked with sparkling eyes, "Does Sir want to establish a new vampire family?" List nodded in affirmation. Blood magic was strange. The blood of vampires was cold, and they needed to hide in dark places during the day to keep their body temperature cool. Cold-blooded usually meant treachery and betrayal. He did not know whether this was true or not, but this was the feeling that Bloody Mary and the other vampires gave him. Therefore, he did not want to establish a new vampire family, but it did not prevent him from using the gimmick of establishing a new family to motivate the 5 vampires to work. His original intention was to compile blood magic into a magic book. He would give it to Achi, Chris, and the others to study and draw meaningful inspiration from it, laying a foundation for them to become magic shooters. Chris estimated that they might not be talented enough, but Achi was very likely to become a magic shooter. In the following days, the 5 vampires hid in the bottom of the cabin, tossing and turning the book that List named The Essence and Development of Blood Magic. When they were about to reach the Roaring Estuary, the new battle plan had been submitted to all the Lord followers of the Sapphire Grand Duke. Lee William quickly gathered his followers, went to the Tulip for a meeting, and then assigned the tasks of the Coral Island Orders of Chivalry. "We will cooperate with the first prince to attack the coast of the Roaring Estuary. Among all the cities near the sea, I chose Ice Pear City. It's the territory of a viscount. As far as I know, this viscount has just been in theft to Ice Pear City in the last 2 years. His castle is Snow Pear Castle, and he himself is known as the Clearwater Sword Sage. Since he was called the Clearwater Sword Saint, he was naturally a Sky Knight of the Sword Saint level. He was probably a Water Sword Saint. Blade Master is just a viscount?" Jonas Gravel asked curiously. "Perhaps he offended a great noble and was demoted to a viscount. It is indeed possible." List was not curious about this. As a dragon knight, he was also a viscount. So he said directly, "Although the opponent is a sword saint, the viscount's castle can't stop the blizzard beast from dismantling it. Let's take Bingpear City as a sacrifice first." William Lee understood List's strength, so he easily seconded the suggestion. Using the Sword Saint as the opening for this battle is the best. The meeting ended shortly after. After returning to the sunset, List gathered the 5 vampires who were working hard on the book. "Let's put aside the task of writing the book. This is a long-term mission. There's no rush. Now, we are not far from the coastline. I need you to sneak into Ice Pear City and collect information, especially information about magicians." Ice Pear City? The fief of the Clearwater swordsman Yevich Water Peanut? Night Demon Wimbledon blurted out. "You know this person?" "Yes, my lord. I've heard of the Clearwater Sword Saint. He used to be a candidate for the Dragon Knight of the Eagle Kingdom, but he was too indulgent after he became an adult and wasted his talent. Furthermore, his character was also questionable. He had followed 3 marquises in succession, and in the end, he had fallen out with all of them. That was why I came to Furious Roar City and followed Marquis de Maria Rainflower Stone and was conferred the title of Viscount. There were many marquises in the Eagle Kingdom. Perhaps many nobles in the Eagle Kingdom did not know how many marquises there were. Just the area around the mouth of the Roaring Estuary included the territories of 5 marquises, and Marquis Wildwave was one of them. His territory was called the Battering River Plain, and its boundary was from the mouth of the Roaring River to the upstream tributary of the Three Dragons River. The main city was Furious Roar City. The name of the Roaring Estuary came from the Roaring River, which was a river much larger than the Yangtze River, the Nile River, and the Amazon River on Earth. The Battering River Plain downstream was also extremely vast. Ice Pear City was a small city on the Battering River Plain. Night Demon Wimbledon continued to introduce, the Clearwater Sword Saint is very powerful. As a candidate for the Dragon Knight, I'm afraid it will be difficult for us to sneak in front of him. You don't need to face him directly. You just need to find out if there are any great magicians in the city. Yes, my lord. The vampires left the sunset at dusk and flew to Ice Pear City. List stood at the bow of the ship without any rest. Now they were only about 10 kilometers away from the land, and they could land and fight at any time. It was August 1st, and the night was still cool. Suddenly, a figure rushed over from the sky, and the magnificent fighting energy of water attribute filled the air. It was the Sea Sword Saint, Lee William. List turned around and greeted, "Father, why are you here?" Lee William waved his hand to signal the servants on the ship to leave. Only the father and son stayed at the bow. "Have you sent the vampires out?" "Yes." "List, what are you worried about?" "According to the usual practice, we should directly attack. This is just a small city. What does the Clearwater Sword Saint have that we should be cautious about?" "Father, it's better to fight slowly and surely. After all, he was once a candidate for the Dragon Knight." "A candidate for the Dragon Knight?" "I've asked the vampires. The Clearwater Sword Saint, Yevich Water Peanut, was very talented when he was young, and was one of the candidates for the Dragon Knight. But after he grew up, his talent was wasted, and he had a bad character. He only became a viscount when he was middle-aged. It seems that although he is down and out, he is still very powerful. We should be careful." Lee William nodded and sighed. The eldest prince should have taken some other small cities and started to rest on the land. "I've lived on the ship for decades, but I'm still not used to it. I'm just waiting for one more night." Lee William did not plan to go back immediately after he boarded the ship. He looked at the tower at the stern of the ship and asked, "Your ship is very strange. Is that where you live?" "Yes. You're a nobleman who likes to enjoy life. Let me take a look at your room." When Lee William entered the tower, he was still shocked by the condition of the room, even though he had been mentally prepared. There was a full set of thorny furniture, exquisite glass products, curtains made of green wool, and carpets made of World of Warcraft fur. Most importantly, the master bedroom was cool. It was only August, and the weather was still hot. However, List's room was cool. It was not hot at all. "What's going on? A magic circle?" Lee William asked in surprise as he stood in the room and felt the cool temperature. "It's a magic equipment." List smiled awkwardly, as if he had been caught stealing a chicken leg. "In my territory, there is a kind of golden lip shell. The shell produces golden pearls, which can be used to make magic equipment that can control temperature. I call it the temperature-setting pearl. The production is very low now, so I only have one." "What's the production of the golden pearls?" "List, I need it," Lee Williams said with the dignity of a father. "Of course, I won't take it for free. Just sell it to me according to the market price. You don't have to spend money. I was planning to give you and grandmother 2 temperature-setting pearls as a birthday gift." "That's very kind of you. But only 2? I hope the bedroom, study, dining room, and even the living room can use temperature-setting pearls." The Count had a big appetite. List interrupted him. "I'm sorry, father, but the supply of golden pearls is very low. Even my Thorn Castle can't meet the demand. How about this? As long as there are new golden pearls, I'll sell them to Tulip Castle first." He would definitely sell the golden pearls in the future, but he had to ensure his own enjoyment first. The Count could not force the issue. Seeing that List had no intention of giving him the temperature-setting pearl as a gift, he said, "How about this? I'll share a room with you on the sunset. Do you mind?" "Of course." Chapter 607. List did not have to wait any longer. 5 vampires had flown back from Ice Pear City with the results of their investigation. Bloody Mary vaguely took over the leading position of the vampire servants. She reported, "My lord, Count, we did not dare to approach the Clearwater swordsman, but we accidentally found that he was receiving 3 people dressed as magicians in the castle's living room. Through the Clearwater swordsman's attitude, we feel that they are of equal status." Equal status? List raised his eyebrows. A magician who could be equal to a sword sage was likely to be a great magician. Is there any other information? Judging from the situation we have inquired, it is very interesting that the Clearwater swordsman did not know that you were going to launch an attack. The defense of Snow Pear Castle is very loose. Before Bloody Mary could finish, Peggy suddenly interrupted her and said, "But halfway through, a wretched person entered the living room and said something to the Clearwater swordsman." The Clearwater swordsman quickly ordered the castle to be under martial law, and many materials from Ice Pear City were also moved to Snow Pear Castle. List understood. It seems that Mouse leaked the news, and Snow Pear Castle is prepared. William frowned. There are 3 great magicians, and the Clearwater swordsman is also on guard. List, what do you think of this battle? He smiled faintly. List said lightly, "Father, there is nothing to be surprised about. Gather at dawn to attack the castle. Snow Pear Castle has a sword sage and 3 great magicians, but Father and I, together with the Blizzard Beast squad, they are no match for us." Bloody Mary saw the opportunity and said, "My lord, don't forget your vampire servants. At dawn, we should still be able to perform at the level of a great magician. Although there is no powerful range magic in blood magic, it should not be difficult to help you kill 1 or 2 great magicians." She had confidence in the strength of List, so she always expressed her loyalty. The other 4 vampires were a little reluctant, but they were held back by Bloody Mary and had to respond, "Vampire servants are willing to serve my lord." List looked at the 5 vampires. "It is good that you have this awareness, which means that you have accepted your situation. However, I don't want you to expose your identities. You can follow the orders of chivalry and watch the battle. Just take it as a backup." Before he finished speaking, he thought of something. Also, the name Vampire Servant doesn't sound good. From now on, you should change it to Blood Servant. The 5 vampires looked at each other. What was the difference between a vampire servant and a blood servant? They couldn't keep up with List's train of thought. The dawn was quiet. The Tulip fleet quickly disembarked. The knights donned their equipment, mounted their horses, and assembled on the shore. Riding on Loki's back, List followed orders of chivalry towards Snow Pear Castle. He didn't hide his tracks. Just like that, they dashed towards Snow Pear Castle openly. List did not bother to use any tricks anymore. He was like a max-leveled main account leading a lower-leveled account to level up. In the eyes of the lower-leveled account, there was no difference between a boss and a monster in his eyes. Alt accounts had to pay attention to positioning, kiting, and so on. When a max-leveled main account fought a boss, it was a brainless attack. The patrolling knight of Snow Pear Castle soon discovered the orders of chivalry and fled back to the castle like the wind to report to the sword sage of Clearwater. So when orders of chivalry approached Snow Pear Castle, they were greeted by a silver-armored knight standing on the balcony at the top of the castle. Obviously, it was the sword sage of Clearwater, Yevich Waterpeanut, the former candidate for the Dragon Knight. He looked at the charging orders of chivalry of Coral Island with a cold glint in his eyes. What a terrible experience. Less than 2 years after coming to Ice Pear City, Sapphire's flies came to steal our food. But this time you picked the wrong opponent. Let me, Yevich, show you what pain is. He stamped his foot. A voice suddenly came from below the balcony. Don't worry, Viscount Yevich. We are ready to release magic together. If Sapphire's orders of chivalry dares to attack the castle, we will make them tremble in fear in the fireworks of magic. But after a round of magic, the free magic on the battlefield will be minced. Viscount Yevich will have to deal with the aftermath. The embodiment of sorcerers on the battlefield. It was similar to a magic scroll that could only be used once. It would be extinguished after one round of shooting. Orders of Chivalry's fighting spirit interfered too much with the magic in the surrounding space, which happened to restrain the sorcerers who needed to sense and absorb the free magic to release magic. In this continent dominated by night, it was not a coincidence that the spellcasters had declined. Yevich knew this. But he also believed that the Grand Duchy of Sapphire's Orders of Chivalry did not know that Snow Pear Castle had 3 great sorcerers. As long as the other side attacked the castle, a round of magic from the great sorcerers would definitely have a decisive effect. But he soon found that the Coral Islands Orders of Chivalry stopped outside the castle. The leader was wearing silver armor and a red cloak, riding on the back of a long-legged bird, holding a cylinder in his hand and placing it on his eye. After a moment's pause, the knight in the lead put down the cylinder, and the Orders of Chivalry started again, charging towards Snow Pear Castle. Dust rose all over the sky. When the charge reached the magic range, Yevich stomped his feet. Without his reminder, the 3 great sorcerers hiding in the room below the balcony raised their hands and began to gather magic. A well-prepared magic baptism was about to be brewed and released. Yevich's mouth curved into a sarcastic smile. The water element fighting spirit was running in his body, surging and roaring, waiting for the moment to attack. The knight in the castle also held their weapons, waiting to beat the drowning enemy. On the opposite side, Coral City's Orders of Chivalry, List was in charge of the overall command of the battle. His magic eyes had not been interrupted. Through the telescope, he had already locked on the position of the 3 great sorcerers, as well as the flamboyant Clearwater swordsman. Under his command, the Orders of Chivalry began to charge. List kept watching the movements of the great sorcerers. When he saw them raising their hands to brew magic, List suddenly picked up the swift shadow bow, aimed at the window, and shot 3 arrows. The arrows were enchanted with dragon fighting spirit. The arrows whistled through the air. Yevich, who was on the balcony, suddenly rushed towards the 3 arrows. He had no time to wonder how List found the great sorcerers in the castle and accurately shot the arrows, ready to shoot the great sorcerers who released magic. Boom! The water element fighting spirit collided with the fire element fighting spirit. The 3 arrows suddenly exploded, and the dragon warrior energy released instantly turned into 3 balls of flames, smashing Yevich's water warrior energy and bombarding his body, causing him to scream and fly away, crashing into the wall of the castle. The smile of a winner hung on List's face, and he was proud of himself. The sword sage could not even block one of his arrows. He put away the swift shadow bow and replaced it with a whistle. Whoosh! The sharp whistle reached the ears of the charging knight. In the next moment, the knights who were charging forward with great momentum turned their horses' heads together and moved to the left and right in an orderly manner at a speed faster than when they were charging. It was as if the Snow Pear Castle was a solid stone in the water, splitting the night torrent from the middle, but the split was a little far. At this time, the 3 great sorcerers had joined forces and released powerful magic, condensing on the path of the charging knight. But what made the 3 archmages want to vomit blood was that the charging knights actually turned around and ran away halfway. This meant that they had made a mistake in their judgment. The joint magic that they had been preparing for a long time was completely useless. What was more terrible was that the Clearwater swordsman was shot by an arrow and hung on the wall. Chapter 608. This chapter is for the leader, legendary battle song, 1 chapter for now, and 10 chapters later. This is battle songs all to count again, rumble. Thunder roared and lightning flashed, the wind blew, and the rocks flew. This was a magic released by 3 great wizards, which could be regarded as a combination magic. The open space in front of the castle instantly fell into a doomsday-like scene. Unfortunately, such a powerful magic could only ravage the ground. Orders of Chivalry of Coral City, who should have been ruthlessly ravaged, had already run away from the range of the magic, hiding in the distance, pointing and marveling at such a powerful magic. What a beautiful scene. If time could stop, I really want to preserve such a scene as a beautiful memory. Wizards are still very powerful. Fortunately, Sir List was prepared, otherwise we would have to go in and take a bath. No matter how powerful it is, it's useless if it can't hit. Behind orders of chivalry, in the logistics team belonging to the retainer knight, the 5 vampires were not surprised to see the disaster-like magic scene in the distance. In the night, they were also at the level of great wizards. What really surprised them was the scene of List shooting the Sword Saint of Clearwater with one arrow. No matter how Bloody Mary publicized the horror of List and how he killed the pure-blood vampire Tubert Black Knight, these vampires were more afraid of having their hearts pinched by List, but they were not convinced of his strength. They even thought of assassinating him in the dark. However, at this moment, many thoughts were crushed in an instant. The one-eyed Wuxia muttered to himself, "That's the Sword Saint, a candidate for the Dragon Knight, how could he not block an arrow?" Just how powerful was this lord? Could it be that Mary's words about him instantly killing Tubert were true? How is it possible? He is only 18 years old and has just become a Sky Knight. Knight Demon Wimbledon was confused. Has Yevich's strength declined? It must be that Yevich's strength has declined. Yes, it must be that Yevich's strength has declined. But, even if his strength has declined, he is still a Sky Knight. Why couldn't he even block an arrow? Bloody Peppa and Bloody Hamel were shocked speechless. Only Bloody Mary giggled. "Peggy, Hamel, Wimbledon, USO, I didn't lie to you guys, right? His strength is unfathomable." Then, she licked her coquettish red lips and said with a charming expression, "Compared to Tubert, that perverted pureblood, such a person is worth following. I, Bloody Mary, will definitely build a vampire family for you, and become your eyes and ears in the dark." No one knew how the ancient vampire survived. When the night ruled the world, the vampire families existed as vassals of the great nobles. They called themselves vampiric servants. As a vampire, relying on the strong was part of his instinct. Behind List, the Count was also riding his horse, away from the orders of chivalry, ready for a sword fight at any time. He looked at his second son's tall and straight back, and his worldview was once again refreshed. Back then, during the actual combat practice, he was already powerless to resist. Now, it seemed that List's strength had increased crazily again, to the point where a Sword Saint couldn't resist one arrow. If a Sword Saint couldn't resist one arrow, how many arrows could a perfect Sky Knight? If a perfect Sky Knight couldn't resist, then what kind of existence was List at his current level? There was a stormy guess in his heart, and countless thoughts rolled in his mind. But in the end, it turned into a sigh, and he suppressed all the thoughts at the bottom of his heart. No matter what the future would be, the present was the most important. His lifelong wish was to achieve military merits, be promoted to a noble, and strengthen the Tulip family. List, who had already been enfeoffed, was destined to separate from the Tulip family. As for how it would develop, the Count felt that he didn't need to ask. Good fortune and misfortune were closely related. No one could tell what would happen in the future. After a few breaths, the doomsday-like magic slowly receded. The doomsday-like magic had slowly receded, and List's second wave of arrows turned into 3 flames, rushing towards the castle window. However, the magician who had been hiding in the room had hurriedly hid in the depths of the castle, not daring to show up to cast spells again. Boom! The arrow burst open in the window, blasting a big gap. The Clearwater Sword Saint, who was originally hanging on the wall, rushed into the castle during the gap between the great magician's casting and hid inside, not daring to show up. Whoosh! The whistle sounded, which was the signal to charge. The orders of chivalry of the Coral City regrouped and launched a real charge against Schwelly Castle. Countless archers shot arrows wildly around the castle. Their dochi frantically tore the free magic in the air around the castle, creating an anti-magic space. There were only sporadic arrow counterattacks from the castle. Dosen, it's time for you to appear. With the call of List, the long-awaited blizzard beast pair made a grand appearance. 9 huge black dogs, surrounded by the orders of chivalry, came to the front of Xueli Castle and madly spewed rock thorns and rock grenades. Every rock bombarded the castle wall, shattering a large piece of stone. The wall was like sand, peeling off layer by layer. After a while, one side of the wall collapsed, and the howling Coral Island knight rushed to the gap like a bee pupa. List and Li William were no exception, rushing into the gap side by side. The sky cutter sword was in his hand. The dragon's Do Chi surged and transformed into a flame armor covering his whole body. The knights who were blocking the gap were unable to put up any resistance. The blade easily cut through like tofu, and 7 or 8 earth knights were cut in half on the spot. The upper and lower bodies were separated, and looking at their split appearance, there was a special visual pleasure. Earl Li William was not willing to let his son steal the limelight. The water attribute Do Chi also gushed out freely, and the sword swept up several knights blocking the way, instantly distorting the knight's body and strangling them with the power of Do Chi. 2 sky knights opened the way. Following that, countless elite earth knights picked up the loopholes and cleared the battlefield. The resistance of Xueli Castle collapsed in just a moment. Such a scene of torture and killing. A knight's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He hurriedly threw away his weapon and knelt down to beg for mercy. With someone taking the lead, the rest of the knight knelt down one by one. The knight of Coral Island orders of chivalry was tied up and captured. Where is Yevich? List grabbed the armor of a knight and asked. The knight was shrouded by the dragon's Do Chi. He felt a huge force firmly binding him, as if he was nailed to the ground, unable to move or breathe. Terrified, he did not dare to hide anything. He replied with difficulty, "Sir, no, Yevich went to the castle's back garden, he may be trying to break out." Leaving the knight, List said, "Father, I'll leave this place to you, I'll go after Yevich. Don't forget there are still 3 great wizards. The great wizards can't escape." Although List did not know where the great wizards were hiding, the knight's Do Chi had completely banned magic in Xueli Castle. Great wizards who could not release magic were as good as useless, and it was only a matter of time before they were found. The most urgent task now was to catch Yevich. He had not caught a sacred swordsman alive so far. After catching him, he could at least squeeze a few sprites out of him. Once a sky knight was captured, the ransom would not be a few gold coins. Chapter 609. List rushed through the gap in the castle and ran all the way to the back garden of the castle. He used the eye of magic but did not find Yevich Water Peanut. But under a patch of grapevines, he saw a few servants hiding something. List sensed that something was wrong. He rushed over and grabbed one of the servants. "Where is Yevich?" Without waiting for the servant to answer, he kicked away the water jar that the servant used to store water. Suddenly, a square well cover was revealed. I don't know, stupid." List threw the uncooperative servant to the stone table. The servant fell on it and rolled on the ground. He could not get up for a while. Usually, he was not willing to kill ordinary people except for knight and sorcerers. War was a game between nobles. Civilians were usually part of the wealth. It was morally unacceptable for a knight to kill civilians. If the civilians dared to resist, they would be killed. Furthermore, even if there were moral restraints, there would still be knights who would kill indiscriminately in the heat of the moment. There was no punishment afterward. For example, now that List had killed all the civilians in Snow Pear Castle, no one would say anything bad about him. However, he was not a tyrannical person. He had some sympathy for the civilians. Whether a knight was moral or not. In the end, it was all about self-restraint and the glorious words of the knight's glory. Fortunately, List did not need the servant's answer. He kicked open the well cover and quickly jumped down. It was obvious that this cellar was the escape tunnel of the castle. He activated the dragon's fighting and took out a crystal lamp. He quickly found the tunnel entrance. With the protection of the dragon's fighting, he was not afraid of the traps in the tunnel. This world had not developed the art of mechanism yet. Even if there were traps in the escape tunnel, they were very simple killing methods. If there were really magic equipment in the escape tunnel, he could see and crack it with his eye of magic. The tunnel was a little narrow. Liszt had the crystal lamp to illuminate the tunnel. His vision was not blocked, so he quickly rushed down the tunnel. The tunnel was a little winding, and there was water in many places. He could clearly see fresh, wet footprints. It's not the footprints of one person. They are a little messy. It should be Yevich and the three sorcerers' footprints. Now that he understood, he couldn't help but quicken his pace. Right at this moment, a loud rumble suddenly sounded from ahead. Then he heard a very faint sound. It sounded like cursing. He continued to charge forward. Soon, at the end of the passageway, three silhouettes could be seen. They were the three great mages who had launched the combination magic. Their cursing could be heard clearly, and Liszt quickly understood the reason. It turned out that Yevich had blown up the gate at the end of the passage. That was to say, in order to escape, Yevich threw down the three great magicians as bait. Stop talking nonsense, Lars. Let's work together and release magic to bombard the top of the passageway to open up a path out. Cyril, raise the rock armor for me. Delaka, raise the water wave shield for me. I'm afraid I'll be buried if the tunnel collapses again. Don't worry, you won't die. The three great magicians blocked the passage, trying to think of a way to save themselves. Unfortunately, before they could release their magic, Liszt had already rushed over to them along the passage. My friends, why are you in such a hurry to leave? Follow me back to Snow Pear Castle. It's you. You shot down Yevich's knight with one arrow. Sure enough, he's already here, Liszt stared at the three great magicians with his eye of magic and slowly approached them. Since you already know who I am, there's no need to be polite anymore. Follow the passage back to Snow Pear Castle and we'll have a good chat. The mage on the left, don't secretly gather magic. Your actions can't escape my senses. The great mage who was discovered smiled awkwardly and dispersed the magic gathered in his palm. When a mage was approached by a knight, a very powerful sky knight at that, he was no different from a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. The era of spellcasters had declined. It was said that the mages of the Moon Empire were very powerful and dominated the continent. Unfortunately, it was the era of the knight that dominated the continent. Sometimes, Liszt suspected that the legendary magic shooters could fight with dragons. Although they could not defeat the dragon knight alone, they were still the representative of the world's peak power. Why were the great mages and great mages so weak? Although they could release powerful magic, they could not show their real fighting ability. Especially the restriction of casting speed, which allowed the knight to attack the mages unscrupulously. No matter how powerful the magic was, it was meaningless if it could not hit the knight. No matter how strong the defensive magic such as the water wave shield or rock armor was, it would be broken by the knight in a short time. Not to mention that the knight formed a team, their fighting energy could mince the drifting magic and form an anti-magic area, directly destroying the mage's ability to cast spells. Looking at the three great mages dejectedly walking back along the passage, Liszt could not help but sigh in his heart. When I was writing Dragons Fight in the Wild, I read a lot of magic books and knight novels. They all mentioned the glory of the Moon Empire. There was even a legend that the mages of the Moon Empire built a magic array leading to the moon on the peak of Muragadon Mountain. If that era was really like the recorded history, it was definitely a glorious and brilliant civilization. The mages who created the Moon Empire would obviously not be as weak as the current mages. So what caused the decline of the mages era? Is there any difference between the mages of today and the mages of the Moon Empire? After the collapse of the Moon Empire, what happened that allowed the rise of the night? Unfortunately, no one recorded the history. The sporadic oral rumors had long deviated from the truth. The mystery was difficult to solve. List did not go after the Sword Saint of Clearwater. Since the passage was blocked, there was basically no hope of catching up with the Sword Saint. He felt it was a pity that the reward for capturing the Sword Saint had flown away. However, the three great mages as captives could make up for the loss a little. He believed that they would pay enough ransom for their freedom. When he returned to Snow Pear Castle, the Earl had already sent people to start cleaning the castle, which had a collapsed wall. Didn't Yevich catch up? He escaped through the tunnel and even destroyed the exit of the tunnel. But he left us 3 guests. List pointed to the 3 great mages in magic cloaks. Although they were prisoners, the 3 of them still maintained their arrogant posture, calmly waiting for the next trial. List handed over the leadership of the trial to the Earl. He was going to search Snow Pear Castle himself to see if Yevich had left anything valuable behind. According to the original arrangement, the military achievements would be given to Lee William, and the resources would be given to List. So all the resources in Snow Pear Castle belonged to List. Commander Marcus had already sorted out the resources. When he saw List coming back, he immediately came to report, "My lord, the food and other resources in the castle have been sealed up, except for the replenishment of the orders of chivalry. We are looking for carriages to transport them back." "Where are the elves?" "We have searched the worm room. There are no elves left. They should have been taken away by Yevich." Chapter 6:10. After patrolling around the castle, he did not find anything special. The assets of the Clearwater Sword Saint Yevich Water Peanut were so poor that he did not look like a sword saint. The materials in Snow Pear Castle were not even as rich as those in Gravel Castle and Beer Castle, which made List quite despise. Of course, he was not so angry that he really cut the worm stalks. The Night War was a noble game, although there were no explicit rules that must be followed in the war. But just like the Geneva Convention signed by all countries on Earth to protect civilians and war victims, under the knight system, there was also a set of rules that belonged to the spirit and character of a knight. The spirit and character of a knight were publicized differently in different countries, but in general, there were slogans such as loyalty, fearlessness, courage, honesty, justice, protection of territory, and glory. There was no propaganda, but it was real, such as the prohibition of killing captives. Gold coins could be used to redeem a knight, the prohibition of hurting elves, the prohibition of killing civilians, the prohibition of traitors, the need to ensure the purity of their children's blood, and so on. Once, the king of the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom sent troops to the duke's palace because a duke of a duchy liked to kill civilians. In the end, the duke was deprived of his title, but the kingdom did not abolish the duchy, but supported the duke's younger brother to inherit the title. Of course, it was more likely that the duke had a conflict with the kingdom than that the duke liked to kill civilians. But killing civilians was the best excuse for the duke to send troops. List also followed these rules. He did not want to destroy them. After all, killing the elf worm stalks would hurt the vitality, which would affect the final production. Even transplantation would not work. If the elves were away from the worm stalks for too long, the worm stalks would gradually wither. Although the elves could breed new worm stalks, they would also hurt their vitality and would probably die prematurely. The Grand Duchy of Sapphire wanted to plunder enough resources every time it issued an expansion order, so it could not consume elves and other resources at will. Otherwise, after several expansion orders, no nobles would be willing to reclaim the coastal hinterland. In fact, with the continuous invasion of the expansion orders, several coastal hinterlands of the Eagle Kingdom that were often plundered had given birth to many nobles who did not produce. These nobles secretly supported mercenary groups to engage in serf trade and various smuggling trades to escape moral condemnation. For example, the civilians of those towns were generally free from the ravages of war. Unfortunately, if the knights didn't come to destroy them, the mercenaries would still come to plunder. It was not hard to imagine that without the protection of Snow Pear Castle, Ice Pear City would soon be attacked by mercenary groups. But these were not problems that Liszt was willing to worry about. He stood on the second floor of the castle, looking at the grapevines in the backyard, still regretting Yevich's escape. It seems that many castles have tunnels. I should also build a tunnel in Thorn Castle. Building a tunnel to the sea would make it convenient for me to see a Qi, and also convenient for me to escape from the sea. If he escaped into the sea, he would have lulled the rainbow whale to breathe. Even the dragon knight wouldn't be able to hit him, except for the water dragon knight. The water dragon was an elemental dragon after all. Perhaps the dragon knight could breathe underwater, while sighing with emotion. Another ball of distorted smoke floated in front of him. Mission completed. Reward, a hand-drawn map of the ruins. Yevich had escaped, and the three great wizards had become prisoners. Mission completion was a matter of course. Moreover, Liszt believed that the map of the ruins was in the hands of the three great wizards. If he wanted it, he could get it at any time. The battle achievements belonged to the Count, the resources belonged to him, and the map of the ruins was obviously also his. He began to focus on the next mission. This was already the 126th mission, the escaped Yevich Water Peanut is unwilling. Perhaps he is waiting for you in the next city. If you want to plunder the resources to attack the river plain, a great battle is bound to happen. Please capture or kill Yevich. Reward, an Iron Knight. The content of the mission was nothing special. It generally developed along the way. What surprised him was the mission reward, an Iron Knight. So, the city that Yevich fled to should be Steel Dam City, and there is an Iron Knight in Steel Dam City? Steel Dam City was the next target of the Coral Island Orders of Chivalry. The Iron Knight was a type of knight. They cultivated a special Do-Chi secret manual and could forge all kinds of divine weapons. The Red Blood Sword, the Sky Cutter Great Sword, the Swift Shadow Bow, and other weapons were all forged by the Iron Knight. Wizards made magic equipment, such as gem pendants, amplification bracelets, wind beads, and so on. The Iron Knight forged all kinds of gem weapons, mithril armors, elven weapons, dragon bones, and other weapons. The magic equipment made by wizards stimulated the magic power of the materials themselves in the form of magic arrays, thereby forming special effects and power. The weapons forged by the Iron Knight were forged by combining the materials with the weapons, and then through special forging methods, they were suitable for the knight to pour chi into them, triggering the magic power resonance of the materials themselves, and displaying formidable power. Magic equipment could be stimulated as long as there was magic power, and it was not limited to chi or magic. Gem weapons, elven weapons, and so on the other hand, required chi to stimulate them, otherwise they would not be able to display their power. Training an Iron Knight consumed a lot of resources. Generally, only the great nobles would choose the talented young knight of their territories and train them into an Iron Knight. Even many Iron Knights themselves were the children of great nobles. The grandson of the Bull Marquis had also become an Iron Knight at a young age. It was because of this that Liszt deduced that he was very talented. I hope that this Iron Knight can bring me the method of training an Iron Knight. An Iron Knight alone is not much. The systematic training method he mastered is really valuable. Back in the castle, the Count had finished interrogating the three great magicians. Lars Truth, Solaire Truth, Delaka Truth, these were the names of the three great magicians. Although they were all magicians of the Eagle Kingdom, they came from different places. Half a year ago, at a magician's gathering, they walked to the same stall. The other party was an ordinary magician, and he took out a map of the ruins that was about to decay and sell it. Lars explained expressionlessly, that is a moon language map. After our appraisal, it is a map left behind by the Moon Empire, and it points to a lost civilization. All three of us took a fancy to this map, and none of us wanted to give it up. Finally, we decided to study it together. Solaire added, "The map is incomplete." The magician told us that he found it in the ruins of an ancient wizard tower, so we spent all our savings to excavate the ruins of the wizard tower. From the ruins of the wizard tower, they did not find the other part of the incomplete map. But according to the clues left behind in the ruins of the wizard tower, they successfully completed the incomplete map and drew a map that was not very accurate. The map pointed to the roaring estuary. According to our research, during the Moon Empire, most of the area of the roaring estuary was actually the sea. The lost civilization that the map pointed to was a strange race living in the sea. The Moon Empire had trade with this strange race, so we came here to find this strange race. A race in the sea? Chapter 6:11. Liszt suppressed his thoughts and asked, "Have you found the lost civilization on the map?" Lars Truth expressed regret. "We can roughly be sure that the lost civilization should be somewhere offshore in the roaring estuary, but it is too difficult to find it." Delaka Truth then sighed. "The Moon Empire was a great civilization thousands of years ago. Even it disappeared. The lost civilization should have been destroyed in the sea long ago. For many years, there has been no movement on the sea except for the people of Sapphire. It is very difficult for us to find it from the sea. It was difficult to do anything without money, so they had the idea of the coastal aristocrats, preparing to let the aristocrats invest in their research and excavation work. The Sword Saint of Clearwater, Yevich Water Peanut, promised to fund them. Who knew that we would encounter Sapphire's exploration order? If I had known, I wouldn't have rushed here. But you still came. Yes, the desire for knowledge drove us to come here at the wrong time, and we suffered the wrong treatment." Serial Truth complained. He was brooding about being a prisoner. Liszt did not care about the attitude of the three archmages. He put away the hand-drawn map of the ruins and the map research notes they carried with them. He said calmly, "I have received the map of the ruins. Now, let's talk about the ransom of the three of you." "I'm sorry, sir. The only wealth the three of us have is the map in your hand. In addition, not only do we have no extra money, but we also owe a lot of money to several archmages. I'm afraid you won't get the ransom you want from us. We shouldn't have been involved in the Night's War." When Charles spoke, the other two archmages nodded in agreement. "Well, can't pay the ransom. Originally, as archmages, I wouldn't have made things difficult for you if you didn't participate in the Night's War, but you have already used magic and joined this exploration order war. So the rules are the rules. You can't escape just because you're not a knight. But we really can't pay the ransom. The ransom is not only in the form of gold coins," Liszt said lightly. From the moment he found out that these three people were poor, he had already thought about how to treat them. There are other forms. For example, knowledge is wealth in my eyes. You can use knowledge to exchange for freedom. If you don't have enough knowledge, working for me is also a way to obtain freedom. Sir, you can tell us in detail what kind of knowledge can exchange for our freedom. All the knowledge in your heads, such as the development of the mages in the Eagle Kingdom, the spellcasting plans that you have mastered, and the magic experiments that you have researched all year round. However, the value of knowledge is not high. Your best choice is to work for me. Sir, are you going to worship us? Not worshipping, but working for me for free. You should know very well that knight who can't pay the ransom will be thrown into the mines to mine, or forced into the workshops to do odd jobs. I need you to create magic equipment, create magic potions, and teach magic apprentices." Without waiting for the three archmages to respond, he added, "Let's put the specific ransom plan aside for now. We'll talk about it in detail after the expedition order is over. You need to spend a few days in confinement on the ship. Think carefully about what knowledge you have to offer. The more knowledge you have, the shorter your working years will be in the future." After that, Liszt no longer paid attention to the three, and directly ordered his subordinate knight to take them away, there were naturally tools to imprison the mages on the ship. He wanted these archmages to calm down first, to wear away their arrogance, and to understand how precious freedom was. After all, in his eyes, the mages were psychopaths, and he needed to spend effort and time to reform them. Otherwise, if he let them work for him, sooner or later there would be a rebellion like the dragon-slaying incident. The matter of the mages had been dealt with. For the time being, there was no intention to explore the map of the ruins. The expedition order was the only task now. Father, the knight that was sent out should have uprooted all the noble castles under the jurisdiction of Ice Pear City. We can finish the cleanup work tomorrow. According to my guess, Yevich should have escaped to Steel Dam City. We should strike first and capture several castles before Marquis Nuteo can react. He couldn't wait to capture or kill Yevich alive. The Count, however, hesitated. Marquis Nuteo's orders of chivalry are guarding the impact plane. If we advance too rashly, we will easily become the target of his attack. Should we slow down and let the other aristocrats act first as a cover for us? The Coral Island orders of chivalry only had more than 1,000 knight, which was difficult to confront the Marquis forces. Speed is the most important thing in war. Only by constantly plundering can we get enough merit and seize the opportunity for father to be promoted to Marquis. I have blood servants to investigate the enemy's forces, blizzard beasts to attack the city, and my own powerful strength. Who can stop us? Liszt was very arrogant and bewitched. What level of strength have you reached? The Count asked casually. Liszt replied after some deliberation, he's definitely not as good as Marquis Bull back then, but the gap isn't that big. There were only two people in the room, the Count and Liszt. After a moment of silence, the Count asked again, Marquis Bull stole the power of the Sapphire Dragon and transformed it into the legendary Lich, which gave him great strength. So, my son, can you tell me why you are so strong? You were just an Earth Knight half a year ago. He didn't intend to ask, but in the end, he couldn't hold it back. The impact of the arrow that shot the holy swordsman in the morning has not subsided until now. Faced with this question, Liszt fell silent for a while. He got a fire dragon and became a dragon knight. It should have been the way of the king. However, relying on the smoke missions to constantly stir the threads of fate, the development of the territory was booming, his own cultivation was getting stronger, and he had obtained various treasures. In particular, the seven-colored whale Lolth and the siren He allowed him to retreat into the sea and escape with peace of mind. There was no desperate crisis. This bred the restlessness in his heart. If he didn't show off for a day, he would feel uncomfortable all over. He was like a nouveau riche, every day thinking about wearing a watch, a ring, a big gold chain, and showing off his wealth everywhere. The ancient overlord Xiang Yu once said, wealth does not return to its hometown, like wearing silk clothes at night, who knows? This was a very vivid description of Liszt's mentality. Who would know how beautiful your clothes were if you wore gorgeous clothes and had to walk at night? Of course, Liszt could disguise himself, like an ordinary sky knight, and farm on the island step by step. Eventually, his wings would be full and he would soar into the sky again. But this was not his style. Everyone's pursuit of life was different. What he enjoyed was the shocked expression of others. After a long time, just when the Count thought that Liszt was not going to answer, you're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.